In about 1 minute.
Well, like I said, this is something we've always.
You too?
We're getting
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
We're on Zoom.
Myself, the town clerk, and Phyllis Wickerham.
You three are on Zoom?
And K-House.
Oh, I don't have them showing up on my. Just pop the sheet. Popped up. So it is 7 o'clock.
Hold on a second.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You,
I've got 2 gates to get through.
Recording paused. Are we ready, town clerk?
You're gonna, yeah, we put the. recording on there.
All right. We're ready, sir.
So I welcome everyone to this workshop meeting of the Rush Town Board, July 5th, 2022. Please join me for a pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Thank you. That's why I like it.
Councilman Chase,
Here.
Councilwoman Corbin,
Here.
Councilwoman Morelli,
Here.
Councilman Wolver,
Here.
Supervisor Cusey,
Here. You probably notice that this meeting will not be conducted like a typical town board meeting. This is a workshop meeting, and it was on the recommendation of a couple of our town board members who said, you know, if we had workshops to discuss some of this stuff before the town board meeting, that would really streamline the process. And I agree with that. So those who are present at a workshop meeting, either at home or here, will get to see some of the nitty-gritty foundation work done by the town board on the subjects that are before us tonight. At a future date, the subjects completed in the workshop will become part of the regular town board meeting, and we'll have a vote, et cetera, et cetera. There'll be no voting tonight. There's no open dialogue. So it's really an observe on your part. And if you've observed something you don't like, you should call one of us tomorrow and let us have it. So first on our agenda, I believe, is Sue Mee, our very favorite town historian, who's going to talk about the 1911 house and the barrel report that we ordered on that house to go forward.
Yes. So thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. We do have, or I have a short PowerPoint presentation. So this is more an information session because not everybody was involved in the previous discussions of the proposals that were presented last year. So the opening slide there, the bottom right photo is the current appearance of what we call the 1911 corner house. Top left photo is an edited version that Janet Cruz and Maureen Newmeyer worked on together of what it could look like and what we think is, a little bit nicer. So, and it simple changes, fresh coat of paint, some minor landscaping, that sort of thing. So we envision that this town property, corner property owned by the town, could become a community space with displays dedicated to the history of our town. So, next slide. Are you controlling? or-
No.
Oh,
Councilwoman Corbin.
sure.
You can point to both of us.
Go.
Oh,
Okay.
why did we-
So I just wanted to take a moment
1
Oh,
second.
okay.
So I don't know why it did not switch on me.
That's not-
That's
Come on.
We're gonna see home movies.
Yeah. Well, I do not know. I'm a nice looking kid there. All right, let's try it again, but I want to be able to share it. So let me share it for some reason. Let's try that one. All right, we're just gonna go with that for right now, so.
That's fine, okay. I just wanted to touch base briefly on the difference between a town historian and a historical society, because I think there's, among a lot of people, some confusion, and oftentimes think they're one and the same. They work collaboratively, or can work collaboratively together. Sometimes that may not be the case, but I think it would be here. Anyway, town historian is required in legislation that was passed in New York State in 1919, requiring every municipality to have a town historian. So that would be towns, villages, county historians, and there's a state historian as well. So the main responsibilities of a municipal historian are research and writing, teaching, presentations, research related to historic preservation, coordinating civic and patriotic commemorations, like a bicentennial. Historian also works with organizations and other officials in the community to ensure the proper documentation and preservation of history for that community. The Historical Society's role is similar in that it collects, it preserves, it interprets artifacts related to the history of the town. Historical societies often operate museums, houses, or other historic sites, and historical societies are generally nonprofit 501c organizations, so they report to the state as well. The historian is a government official who works with all agencies and organizations, including the Historical Society, to promote the town's history and to ensure that the local history is documented and preserved and made available to the public. There are representatives here tonight from the Historical Society. I'd be glad to add their voices to things I might overlook or misrepresent, and to respond to any questions the board might have. Okay, next slide, Amber. Perfect. So what we call the 1911 Corner House, it's town-owned property situated at the four corners of the intersection of two state roads, routes 251 and 15A. That intersection really serves as the gateway to our hamlet area. The map shown on the slide is from 1902. Earlier maps also include this corner and show how it has evolved and been divided over the years. Rush Town boards and the Rush community have traditionally been very proud of our past and dedicated to preserving the history for future generations. In 1993, the Rush Town Board, for its 175th anniversary, voted to create a museum for Rush. That museum, quote unquote, because it's not a real museum, right? It's not chartered, is the history room on the second floor of the town hall. Artifacts, along with documents, maps, photographs, etc., have been collected over the years, and that collection has clearly outgrown the space. Next slide. So we envision the house also serving as a welcome center for residents and visitors. This is a drone shot of the intersection that Dave Slaversky took in 2020, shows the town hall campus. With the location of the 1911 house at the corner, the space could easily serve our community in the form of a community meeting space, a welcome center, and a secure display area. And it's a central location that could be, or is convenient to everyone. Next slide. So a little bit about the building itself. It was built in the 1920s. Its architectural style is it's an American four-square style of house. It does consist of balloon framing. It was constructed in the 1920s by the Stull family, descendants of one of our town's founding families. So the architecture, being an American four-square, was very popular in the US from the mid 1890s to the late 1930s. So the age of this house fits, directly right in that time period. An American four-square home is basically a square boxy house, which if you look at that, that's what you see. It's usually 2.5 stories, which is what we have with that dormer on the top and front. Usually 4 large square rooms on both the first and second floors. The style of an American 4-square also includes a center dormer and usually a large a large front porch with wide steps. It doesn't have that. I don't know if it did originally. Can't say. Let's see. Balloon framing was a common building style in this time period, and Richard Osgood, the architect from Barrow Architects, told us that that also means that the interior can mostly be modified since interior walls can be removed or relocated. They're not the weight-bearing walls that I hear my father saying all the time, can't do that, can't do that. This house was built as a single-family home in the 1920s. It was purchased as an apartment house by the town in 2006. Some maintenance was done over the years, but nothing, truly extensive. The town board last year voted to put a new roof on, and the asbestos was also removed from the dormer area at the same time. And then this past spring, Carol Barnett donated a number of small tables, chairs, office furniture from the Rochester Lifestyle Medicine office, as they had decided to close their physical office location. Those furniture items are currently being stored at the Rush Highway Department in the basement and second floor of the house. So there's probably a significant amount of furniture that would allow groups to get started in using the space without that being an additional expense. Next slide, Amber. Thanks. So goals for 1911 that would need to be agreed upon in order to move forward. What the Historical Society would do is provide display and education area. We would envision this being half of the first floor, while the other half would be the multi-use community room. And then that multi-use community room would be available for small local rush groups and organizations. Might be an activity center for seniors if they wanted additional meeting space besides the fire department for their luncheons. Maybe they want to meet for coffee or card games, so on. Could also provide additional event space for the library, recreation department, meetings, speakers, etc. Other potential groups might include the Scouts, Lions, Rush Henrietta Rotary, Beautification Committee, any number of different Rush organizations. The Welcome Center would actually be part of the community meeting space so that it's available and accessible to more people at more times. And that would consist of literature from local organizations. Might be helpful for people that are new to the town or even existing residents. They want to find out more about different organizations within the town. I would think the New York Museum of Transportation, the Railroad Museum, Scouts, 4-H, they might want to have pamphlets or brochures there. And then for new families, it's kind of nice for them to stop in, talk to somebody, find out more, what is in our little town, okay? Next slide. There we go. Okay. So next steps, we would need to talk about. I sent everyone the proposal from Barrow Architecture in follow-up to the site study that they did last year. This would be, the second plan would be to create a master plan for how to go forward with renovations and use of the space and so on. In the first report that they provided to us last year, they identified in a list and kind of gave us a checklist of, whether it was, what was the terms they used? Whether it needed to be done immediately or if it was optional or for preservation purposes. Those aren't their terms, but that's kind of what it boils down to. So the report from last year, Barrow found that the building was in generally good condition. And the reason they were hired was there was lots of, varying opinions and differing thoughts on whether the building was even worth putting any money into, whether it was structurally the integral structural integrity of the building. And this was all information that helped the town board make a decision last year that it was worth putting money into. The Barrow report said it was generally in good condition, and they did not see any great impediment to a rehabilitation project. So The second request was for a proposal to help create a master plan to kind of guide the town going forward to how to better redesign the interior space of the building. And that you all have as well. So that would include another site visit, measured drawings, design solution sketches based on feedback of what the town would like to use the space for, and meeting with town identified individuals for a meeting to discuss their findings. Barrow estimates that work would probably take about 3 months to complete. So if the town board, I think, decided to go forward with, there's certain things you could do while you're waiting for that report as well, but there's certain things, like replacing the windows or something along that line. And then the town would need to decide as part of these next steps, funding to pay for any improvements to the house. And I would anticipate the renovation funding would come from the rental income that was generated. The committee, was it 2 years ago? 2024. Okay.
4 years
So
ago,
let's
we
go.
first started talking about it.
Before COVID. That's how I frame things in my mind now, before and after COVID. So it wouldn't be tax dollars that would have to pay for any renovations, but I mean, if that's what the town decides to do. But funds that have already been collected through rental income at the property. And then the last item on the slide is if the town decides to move forward to create a long-term renewable agreement with the Historical Society, that they would essentially be stewards of the property. The town's obviously retains ownership, but they would kind of provide oversight and care. All right, next slide. So roles of the Historical Society in this endeavor would be, they're all listed here as bulleted: guidelines, establishing guidelines. And this would be done in collaboration, obviously, with the town board, but for use of the community meeting space, scheduling use of the meeting space. The Historical Society would prepare rotating exhibits and displays, so it wouldn't just be the same information that's up there all the time. They would have different themes, maybe different times a year, or they collected or received a donation for a new exhibit, things like that. They would also schedule and train volunteers to be docents for the exhibit so that they could meet with the public, answer additional questions. The Welcome Center for the community with other Rush nonprofit organizations as well. So that's just kind of a basic framework of what their role would be as being a steward of the property. Okay, next slide. So these are some of the recommended renovations of the building that, based on the first report from Barrow, what they identified. So it would be the initial report outlined installing installation, replacing the windows with more energy efficient windows, a security system. Currently, there's 4 separate heating and cooling units in the building for each of the apartments. That's probably not the most economical, so we combine those. Maybe you have 2, one for upstairs, one for downstairs. I don't know. Removal of walls. We don't need all those, we don't need kitchens in all 4 apartments. We don't need 4 bathrooms, things like that could open up the space. And because it's the balloon framing, I've been told that taking out those walls is not a concern. And then making the bathroom for downstairs. There's one very large bathroom. It would be even larger if you took out the shower and the tub and all of that sort of thing. And that would be in the center between both sides of the first floor. So that might be fairly straightforward to make it an accessible restroom. And then improving the ramps so that they're safer. There's some deterioration there as well. Fundraising and grant opportunities. Had a number of people over the last couple of years that have said they would be willing to buy a window, I'll buy a door, I'll pay for this, I'll pay for that. So I think there's potential in our community that people are willing to chip in to pay for the cost of a window. And then we'd have to, obviously have them installed, but that could cut down a lot. And I think the fact that furniture was already donated maybe is a statement or a sign that people are interested and willing to support some sort of a community center like this. And with the addition of cleaning up and fresh paint, hopefully, maybe this meeting space could potentially become usable by the end of the year. It doesn't mean everything would be done, but it would become usable. Select artifacts from upstairs in the town hall could then be relocated to the display area on the first floor of the house. These artifacts include small farm tools, period clothing, the organ that's in the town hall lobby. I know Pam would hate to see that leave. I have a mailbox cubicles upstairs from an early Rush post office, a baby cradle, quilt frame, quilts, table made by an industry resident many, many years ago. So this would free up space upstairs, some space, to allow better access to the documents. That would be more of a research area, but you could get to things without having to move a pile of other boxes and things like that, and make it, I think, look better all the way around and have both areas much more accessible and usable to our community and to genealogy researchers from all over. So also, I think it's the last item, yeah, the business plan. In the February 2021 proposal from the Historical Society to the Down is a draft of a business plan. So once some decisions are made about the future of the building, and if it includes the Historical Society, then that business plan could be further refined as well. It's just a basis right now. And next slide. So potential collaborators with the Historical Society, obviously the Town of Rush Board and the departments of the town. Local collaborators could include the Rush Recreation and Park Association, the Railroad Museum, the Transportation Museum, possibly the Monroe County Fair Association, Scouts, Rotary Club, Lions Club, other local area businesses. I mean, when you just start thinking about it, there's a number of different people that might be interested in collaborating on use of the space, creating displays even, if they wanted to create a display for representing their organization, different things like that could be done. And residents and families might also be interested in collaborating. They've indicated they are. There's a number of people who have said over the last couple of years that they don't like to attend meetings, but they'd be more than happy to come work on a project. They'll sand the floor, they'll paint a wall, they'll do something like that. But they have enough with sitting in meetings with, the regular work meetings, so they really don't want to do that. So I think the real goal here is that the 1911 house, and 1911, it's its address, it's not its date of build, okay, becomes a community space with a historical society acting as a steward of the property. But the overarching goal is that the property becomes a gem and a source of pride in our community, that it doesn't sit there not being used, not being in good condition, that it be an asset. So next slide. Key points. The 2017 charrette, the big takeaway from that is that people want to see things in the hamlet. They want to see activity. Personally, I want people driving down 15A, passing through Rush, to realize they passed through a community. We're more than just a little stretch on the highway, taking them to or from their destination. Want them to know they went through Rush. We're a small town, but we're a community, and hopefully community space can bring us together. Any questions or comments? Yes.
I've got to pull Inspector Lindbeck into this question, and that is, has a floor loading calculation been done on that building?
Not that I know.
And if not, and this is for you because of your expertise, would it behoove us to do a floor loading calculation considering that it's balloon framing before we start putting stuff in there or hauling stuff in there?
I would think that would be part of Barrow's initial investigation. They're going to say, here's what we want to do in here, and then they would do the point loading and different things for the building. You might have to add, structural support, don't know until they take a look.
Right. Thank you.
We don't know if that was ever done when there were the apartments in there, correct?
I doubt if it would have been done because the code didn't take place until 84. And I think apartments were in there before 84, plus retail space for furniture sales.
The library was in there at one point too.
A long
That's
time
probably a
ago.
lot.
Yeah. But the last thing we want to do is, assuming this will attract a lot of attention, we don't want to put people where floor loading is 40 pounds a square feet and their presence adds up to 90. Not a good situation.
So how does that, you're saying, John, that,
could
that would be part of their
Barrow or
report.
Whoever's investigation.
okay,
Well, he doesn't understand now that I trust him, but not Barrow. I don't know Barrow. I know him.
he's gonna trust Beryl though.
Better job.
That's right.
Yeah,
It's
to-
got AIA.
Exactly.
Another question I have is it in the works, or is it possibly in the works that the historian would have an office over there?
I don't think that would be in the works. I don't think that would be in the works. I would still be upstairs.
You don't think it would be in the works?
No, I would see myself working closely and collaborating with the Historical Society on displays and sharing information and collection materials back and forth. I think I would stay here probably.
I'm not asking so that you get sustenance over there, but I think, as I was up in your area last week with a visitor, and we didn't touch anything. We went through there and I said, oh my goodness, this is a great collection since I was up there last time. And a lot of that stuff would be quite valuable to someone. And if it's over there, hopefully with an alarm system at night, but maybe with a two-legged alarm system during the day. I don't know. I'm just thinking out loud because it concerns me.
Right. Our collection upstairs has increased significantly in the last few years, and I think part of that was rebuilding trust, where trust was betrayed several years ago. So I think we're back on good footing there, and people bring things, they contact me, they email me with, donating things, and sometimes things just are sitting in front of my office door when I come in, with no notice to who left it, and that's frustrating, but we'll still take their donations. Yeah, I don't know, that wasn't part of what we were talking about, is my office physically moving over there, but I suppose it's something that can be discussed as we move forward. I know you're short on space here in the town hall too.
Well, I'm not asking for that purpose. I'm really thinking about that building when it gets in presentable condition and full of local.
So the
Trinkets.
display area would be really half of the first floor, because that would be the secured area for just artifacts. The other half, the community meeting space, wouldn't necessarily be secure. I mean, there could be maps on the walls and things like that, but I don't think we want to put our one-of-a-kind items that are part of the collection in that area where they're not secure. So then you're talking about, half of that first floor, which is one, I don't know what the dimensions would be roughly, but one rectangular room, I guess. I don't know the size, so you're not gonna fit everything up there. It wouldn't be a substitute for what we have upstairs. It would be, to augment space.
So everything that's upstairs now could not fit, you're saying?
I don't, not at all.
Really?
Mhm. And they're two different, so then you get into ownership, because it's two different entities. One's a nonprofit organization, the other's, everything that's upstairs right now belongs to the town.
Correct.
So,
But I'm just thinking in terms of, I've seen the space, I've gone through there, it's really amazing collection,
right,
but no one gets to see it, unfortunately. So I'm excited about this.
Yes,
And personally, I would like to see it all available for people to look at and, you know, make it a welcoming place for people to come in and walk around and see these things that are part of the history of Rush.
yeah.
And
So the artifacts, the things would definitely be over in the house. But the documents would stay here, and I would envision that being for, and that's the majority of the visitors I get are people that are doing genealogy research.
so they come in, make an appointment and sit down.
And they go through, I
And they
pull out
go-
files on whatever families they're researching or whatever other questions they might have. And usually those are the result of a few emails back and forth beforehand, and then they come, I call it the pilgrimage, especially during the summer months. It seems like that they do a lot of their family research on the computer over the winter months, and then comes the good weather, people make a visit to Rush. And oftentimes I go with them, to the cemetery, show them where their families are buried. If their family houses are still standing, I'll point those out to them. Maybe we'll walk through the hamlet, show them what used to be here, you know, compared to, you know, how it looks today, that sort of thing. But they are mostly interested, and they will sit there and they will go through the files with all, and maybe the files contain information from previous family researchers, so they might find a connection there from somebody who was researching their family in the 1980s or 70s or whatever, but all that documentation is there.
So could that be something that would be on the second floor? I don't know, you know, this layout, but, or if it's not a big deal to create different rooms of different configuration, because they're not load bearing walls, et cetera. You know, have a room for research, an office for you, so you're there. I don't want you to be all alone. I don't know what, you know, how it would be manned by the Historical Society. So I wanted to, you know, what are we looking, you know, we're looking at having the building open 5 days a week or that kind of thing.
I think the meeting room would be open as people have reserved it. The display area would be open, you know, maybe Sundays and then by appointment, or when there's programs scheduled or presentations. If we open up the second floor to the public, then I think we have to make that accessible
Well, I mean, not to the public, but that would be like
to researchers.
researchers by appointment with you.
So
And
I-
it's all there, you know, and, you know, depending on how successful all of the fundraising is, you know,
Right.
nice computer for researching and so on. I mean, I have visions for stuff like that, but
So I think, I'm not certain, but I think we would need to make arrangements that if someone other than a volunteer for the Historical Society or myself wanted to get upstairs, we'd have to provide access other than the staircase, or is that grandfathered because of the age of the building?
I don't know. I think that you probably would have to have some sort of handicap. Was that correct, John? To get up there?
But if it's just being used for the Historical Society volunteers or myself as workspace, then I don't believe you would have to.
If it's not gonna be accessible to the public, you could make the case that you wouldn't need it.
Okay. Yeah, that was
because
my
it's a
understanding.
publicly building,
No, because.
To
the
be
public-
ADA.
The public wouldn't be allowed upstairs.
right, but otherwise, because it's a municipal building, you'd have to be ADA compliant. Yes,
Yes.
okay.
So for example, the Honey Eye Falls Museum, it's right in the village there. Historical Society, town owns the building, or the village owns the building, but the Historical Society operates. First floor is display, museum type of environment. Second floor is all of their workspace. It's just an old, narrow, typical staircase for an old building going up there. But the only people that go up there are their volunteers, not the public. But
I kind of agree. I think that if we go forward with this, I think it would be more fitting that your office was over there with all that stuff. I think it fits, and if you have the records there, if people did want to come, they could see the artifacts displayed. I don't know.
Then I think we're talking about maybe some additional equipment, because you don't have copiers and things like that I use
Yeah,
here,
that's
but I
true.
suppose that's minor.
I know, but we shoot for the moon and put it in our wish list.
I mean, it doesn't have to happen right away, but maybe that's something as you move forward that I mean, I don't know, you're the historian, I don't know, you know better and how things work than
Yeah, and I
anybody.
guess we would have to be very careful about how we catalog collection items as to who owns it. Because I'm just thinking down the road, if a nonprofit organization dissolves, they can't just sell their items. They have to either
Okay.
go to another nonprofit, or in this case, I think we would make it in the agreement that they would go to the town.
So what is the vision then for all the items that are presently owned by the Historical Society as opposed to the town of Rush?
Right now, they don't actually own any collection items because they haven't had a place to put anything.
Okay, but they could, you're saying?
They could, yep. Absolutely. And there's, people that have said, we have things we want to donate. My son or daughter doesn't want any of this Rush history. We don't live here anymore. They don't want stuff, but I'd like it to go somewhere that if they decided they wanted to look at it at some time, they could. And I have one woman, she lives in the Washington DC area. She told me it's in her will that there's the family, Clapp is the last name, that owned all the property where the Rush Refuge is today, prior to industry owning it. She has, the way she talks, tons of stuff in her house, plus things in a storage unit. But she has one child, a son, who absolutely doesn't want this stuff in his house. So I'm glad that in those instances, people think of Rush and returning it to the area that their families came from, and that it would be meaningful to this community. So, we would need to ensure that we could take care of those kinds of donations.
A lot of that stuff has much greater value to the residents of Rush
Right.
and to the town of Rush. But what concerns me is a lot of those items, which are priceless to us, would bring $100, $150 or $200 in a retail antique shop. I would hate to wake up some morning and see an email. Crib that held Danny has left the building. I
I
don't want that.
I think that's why in the business proposal was to have a security system and things like that. But
Right, and if we're gonna put paper-based documents there, we would need to address that as well.
Right.
Security, sprinklers, that sort of thing.
That's
Really
all I
need this
had. on
report to
that
see how we
issue.
divide the house up,
Yeah.
interior, to see
Right.
what's even
doable.
possible. It's balloon frame, but there's still, you gotta have interior walls to support the upstairs.
Correct.
So you need this report to move forward. And there's a lot of work that needs done, to be done. over there. I think we're looking at $250,000 to get it up to code.
Okay.
Windows, doors, ramps, electrical, plumbing. All, it's been divided up into 4 apartments, so stuff's running everywhere. There's no insulation. I mean, there's a lot that needs to be done.
Which previous boards never did. So we need to see how much money came in from rent, so we know.
That when
What-
it went to the general fund, it's not like,
Right, but
Septic.
We know
No, I
how
know,
much it
but-
is.
We know. We?
Yes.
So we need that number, and then if maybe we can break this. We've got the Barrows proposal. I don't know what the next step.
we need this, which I've been saying since we started talking about. We need to do this. That's the next step. And if we're gonna move forward, you gotta do this. And then that'll tell you what's next. And what needs to be done, what's feasible,
Okay.
the whole ball. I mean, but it's gonna be expensive.
I will add to that, Cynthia Hope from the Landmark Society had said last year to me that it will be beneficial to the town, which she was actually commending us last year for having the initial Barrow report done. Because she said if we apply for any grants these granting organizations see that we've done our homework or due diligence by hiring an architecture firm to really evaluate the structure and then, go forward with a master plan, a checklist of how to do things and use the space. She said that it's not a guarantee, obviously, but it'll weigh favorably that they're gonna look that we're not just, randomly making a decision here. We've done the homework necessary and we get an expert to, provide their input on it. So that might work in our favor too.
Mr. Silversky, you can speak only because you've been so involved in this.
And also I'm a board member of the Russian Historical Society. So two things. Bureau Associates was just recognized in Rochester as an outstanding architectural firm with the renovations of the Little. And so they do have a lot of weight clout to add, as Sue said, is reputation and the grants. And another thing to your point about artifacts and people wanting to donate, there are certain rules that historic societies have of what they can take and how they get rid of things. So there's rules that are in place. You just can't say, let's empty grandma's house. We'll take all of it and maybe tchotchke and maybe one thing and we're stuck with all that. So there's a parameter of how things work.
Yeah, we have a collection development policy, just like, all organizations that have collections would have. And that would always also include a weeding policy, how you would remove items from your collection at some point in time. I don't know if you've noticed the last couple of months, Cleveland Historical Society and I think Lima have both recently had sales where the attic sale or the basement sale where they're weeding their collection and they're raising funds by selling some of the items that are no longer relevant or they don't need or they have duplicates or whatever might be the case.
And we have submitted a survey recently, or however it was, of kind of what we thought is the layout that would kind of work. And when you do look at it, the house isn't all that big. It's, it's 2,000 square feet, give or take. We did some measurements ourselves. We looked through it, and it was kind of like the Sue said, a central bathroom, a meeting space, and that probably limited body count, 25, 30 at the most. So there's not a lot of real estate upstairs. The way it's divvied up, no matter what happens, that is surely a small workspace.
But it's more than we have now.
Oh, absolutely.
And we have the house.
And you also have, right now we are a small organization. People have said they're interested in other ways. But the group members that are board members, and we've been long residents of Rush with a lot of passion. So it's not, just a true group of people the last few years showed up. We were starting out with the bicentennial committee and we're committed. Yeah, everybody got thrown off board with COVID, nothing new there. But at heart, it's the history of Rush, which starts every day.
I'd like to see us get going and do it, if it takes, the Barrow Associates here to give us their best advice and do, arrange for the, the structural testing. I don't know if they do that or they have structural engineers on board. I don't know. They do. So, I personally am in favor of getting this going and let's do it now.
I second that motion.
If I could just jump on what Councilman Wolliver said, my understanding is Barrow's going to come in and do a feasibility study as to what you want to see in there. And then that will lead to a full AE development of what you have to support that. Everybody agrees, okay.
Well, with, banty about ideas, like we just discussed here, what you might do with the space, how it would be used. And them giving, the best plan to do it, in the most economical way. We don't want to cut corners that would, make it less structurally intact. We don't want that, but wanted to make it a more usable space. I like the meeting rooms. Gosh, you look at the town newsletter and there's tons of things going on in this town. The library hosts a million things. Maybe they need more space. Maybe other organizations. I know I've gone to meetings in the library, and like, okay, it's open this night, it's open that night with different groups. but here's another resource, another community resource. I think it'll be used. I really do.
And what we've cited in our report that Sue mentioned, it gave similarities of all the historical groups in this area. So you're not just apples and oranges, you get to see like hours of operation, what they do. So you have something to compare and have some, comparables basically. And so it's all in there.
And
Please reread it, take a look at it.
I mean, I just poked around on the web today looking for sources of grants for this type of facility. And, in a short time, I came up with, I'll send it to you. And you probably know, tons more than I do, but it's like there for this type of activity. I'm not saying it's a slam dunk, we would get some money, but we might.
And Bureau's report stated that they listed several and their credibility comes with that as far as getting.
I say we engage it, we do it, we get it, we get going on this, we get it fixed up, we make it used. We put a nice sign out there. It's, again, everybody wants the hamlet. This is part of the vision for the town of Rush is a nicer hamlet, a more community-oriented feel to the hamlet. And I think it'll be used, I really do, on this whole campus. I think it was a good idea that the town bought the property years ago for this purpose, to increase the footprint of the campus. And
And the pavilion's not always available because that's booked and there's other events happening there. So this would just give us another.
all the spaces that we have do get used, I believe. And this could be, right? This will enhance the quality of life in the town if we do it nicely. And if we can get funding, and it's easier than starting from scratch and designing and building a whole new big building, I think. It's gonna be cheaper, I think. I don't know for certain, but let's find out.
Yeah, it was said before too, that we would have setback issues. The existing house is grandfathered, but if you were to put a new building there, because it's bordering two state roads, that would have to be set back further. Correct, John?
New building there, you have to actually buy that.
I've been told that nothing is grandfathered.
Yeah, so then it would have to be.
Well, if you put a new building in there, then you lost your non-conforming use privilege anyways.
At any
If you
rate, I
change it,
think,
right.
A
We
new
have it.
building would not have the history in the walls.
right, I mean, it's part of the town and we can make it fit part of the character of the town. And I, for one, support doing something as soon as possible. Let's stop talking about it and let's do it.
I'll second that motion.
I don't
So
know what anybody else thinks.
is this something we take to the town board meeting next week?
Well-
I think we should have a public, public meeting, and we should take a vote on proceeding with what we've heard here tonight with the Barrow proposal.
We'll put that on the agenda for next week's meeting.
Is
we
that
all in
good with
agreement?
everybody to continue this at this time?
Mhm,
Everybody agrees,
mhm.
so plan on that.
Okay.
I think it'll be time well spent and appreciated by anyone who witnesses.
Thank you for the presentation.
Yes, thank you very much. All of you.
And thanks for not
1911
not giving
stewards.
up.
We can move on. The second item on our agenda tonight is the video conferencing. And I think that Deputy Supervisor Corbin is more than capable of leading that.
Well, Attorney Howe and Attorney Marks sent us a draft of the video conferencing local law. So this is our workshop
That's
to
important.
decide if there's any changes, things like that. So that at next week's town board meeting, we would schedule a public hearing for a future date on it.
Do you want me to generally, so.
That'd be great.
Yeah, so this is really, I think, new and it looks like it's actually maybe repealed by 2024, but it's a COVID, really, it's a COVID thing that they've started. The state, that they being the state of New York, to allow public bodies to meet in a hybrid capacity. So if this new law, public officers law, allows a public body to pass a local law, for a municipality, it's a local law. For a public body, it just has to be a resolution, but for our purposes, it has to be a local law that allows both you and your other boards and subcommittees to meet in a hybrid manner, as long as a quorum is present in person. So let's say, for instance, 3 of you could meet in person, but 2 of you had COVID, or for whatever another reason couldn't be here in person. You could still have the meeting, and those 2 members could still be present virtually and vote, which normally they wouldn't be able to attend virtually because we have that capability, but they couldn't be participating members without this law in place. So this is really just permitting the town to function in that capacity, because the New York Public Officers Law says, as long as you pass a law saying you can do it, you can go ahead and do it.
So I'm assuming that you and David are confident that that authority, once we vote to take it, would not be usurped by the state sometime in the future.
Well, the Public Officers Law, so it says here, expires and deemed repealed by July 1st, 2024. I think the law also says in here that they're going to be looking at this in the future. So this is a Committee on Open Government, really, is the one who is looking at this. And they're going to issue a report no later than January 1st, 2024, to the governor, talking about the impact of this law. So it's possible that New York State says, no, we don't like that this was being done, that this hybrid option is available. But for the current purpose, this is what they're trying out, and I am imagining it's probably going to stick around.
Well, I like it because it allows a board member who, for whatever the reason, might not be able to attend, but they can from home,
Right.
which is a good deal for the rest of us.
Yeah.
And it's a good deal for the people.
Yeah, I agree with that. But it is a nice advent. It's a new thing for open meetings law, because before there were very strict in-person requirements.
So we need to decide whether or not to have a public hearing on the matter next town board meeting.
Yeah, so if this is something that the town board wanted, you would hold a public hearing, pass a local, any other local law that you have, and approve it, and that would allow this hybrid model to be used. Again, I do want to stress, you still have to have a majority of the members in person. So it's not like from then on out, everybody's virtual.
And that's what New York State is saying right now. You need the quorum physically present.
And
There's a chance that I might be working in Adirondack for about 6 weeks of summer, so I might not be available except via Zoom.
right. And as long as there's 3 of us here, and my understanding, this is blanket for, it says all public meetings, so that would be planning, zoning,
Correct.
conservation.
Correct,
So they don't have to adopt their own.
correct,
This,
yeah.
this
The
covers
town board, the
everything.
town has to issue local law to permit them to do so. So the planning board couldn't decide to do this without the town board permitting it, for instance.
And I did see on the Association of Towns website, they had a model.
I'm sure,
Which is-
yeah, I'm
which
sure
is
that's where
pretty much
David-
exactly the same.
David frankly
Yeah.
put this together. I didn't even deal with it, so I'm sure that it was readily available.
So there's number 2 for the agenda. for
All right.
agreement
The only
for
thing on that, Robert, if David's looking at it, on the definitions page,
Yep,
number 2, paragraph B, that second paragraph in B, says Ontario County.
that. Oh, good catch.
Oh, yeah.
number 2.
Under requirements where video conferencing is utilized, procedure for the use of video conferencing. There were 2 pages.
Oh, sorry, yep, got it. Thank you. I will make that change with it.
Supervisor QC,
Yes, ma'am.
within the 3 items that coincide together, Will the board be thinking about getting or anticipating an AV specialist to coordinate all that and the video conferencing and the terminology that is in some of it, or maybe pertaining to the law, includes subcommittees, committees. So you're talking about a lot of video conferencing and a lot of storage, and the storage time frame. There's a little bit more involved than just passing, being virtual.
That's a very good question. Because the discussion at the front of that started a long time ago. And it included things to do in this room,
Mhm.
which were maybe some rearrangements, maybe some additional electronics. And we've never completed that analysis.
Well, we went with the owl.
Well, the owl was a temporary, let's see how the owl works for the next year.
Mhm.
And then if that worked, great, good. But if it didn't lay any eggs that hatched, then we have to move on and do something in addition to that. And I don't think we got to that.
Making sure that everything complies also with the American Disabilities.
Well, absolutely.
That as well is in combined with,
Which
All
is,
those three.
we're in all those proposals that we
Yeah.
went through last year, but we did not adopt any. So if this board, I'll work with the town clerk again and we can start that process up again to see what is out there for this new board,
But
as well as your storage capability.
that would be nice to go about that in somewhat of a time frame associated with our compliance with the new law. I think.
Mhm.
because within it is the 5-year storage. How to store it, how to make sure it's stored properly.
Right.
And we have the areas to place it, especially with all the electronical problems that the supervisor and my office has been having on uploading things, and
Oh, yes.
have to make sure that broadband stuff is fixed in order
And-
to accommodate all this.
And you can only fix it so far.
Right,
I mean, there's only so much bandwidth out there, but we're not alone in what we're trying to do. So we will benchmark. I'll work with you. We'll work with the board
just
and.
for all consideration.
No, it's the 30,000 foot.
Yeah,
It's everything. Absolutely.
It's like buying a reconditioned server versus a new one.
Yes, exactly.
Well,
relying on our experts to be the ones to make those decisions.
Oh, I've heard all about that. All right, so we can put this portion of the bigger discussion on the agenda for next week,
Correct.
but make sure we don't lose sight of the need to
Right.
complete the bigger discussion for the benefit of our selves, our residents, and our support people. Okay?
If you're sticking notes on it.
Now we go back to one, come up with one of my favorite subjects. I don't know why it is, but my wife and I were cleaning the garage over the weekend. I wanted to blow off fireworks. She wanted to clean the garage. She won. I don't know where it came from, but there's a huge battery that's got to weigh 100 pounds. 2 of them in cases in the garage. And she didn't know where they came from. I don't know where they came from. But their life there is going to be short-lived. Because I don't know what they are, where the heck they came from. But that is our next topic of discussion, storage batteries for solar power generation. And Amber, do you
Well,
want to lead this discussion?
yes, we,
I've heard you talk about it more than anyone.
the previous town boards had a battery storage moratorium that was agreed to. And the moratorium has expired. And our neighboring towns many have adopted local laws on battery energy storage systems. And this board wanted to take up the discussion of what should be in our code. We have for solar installations, tier 1, tier 2, but that's just for the panels. We've read a lot about these large scale battery energy storage containers that can have safety issues, others don't. But we as a town board, making sure we are looking at the health and safety of our residents and our town and the environment. This was a workshop item. So Attorney Howe shared with us the Livonia local law, and NYSERDA has a battery energy storage system model law. The building inspector, Mr. Limbeck, reviewed some of this, I think, last year, and then again with this one. If I have that wrong, John, correct me. He, I think, has given us some excellent comments in his emails to us. David sent us NYSERDA battery energy storage system checklist, a battery energy storage system permit, and the battery energy. Oh,
Did you send him after me?
What was that?
A wasp.
Oh,
Oh, he came like a jet.
oh, I didn't see.
well, given I'm allergic, let's stamp that.
If I had sneezed, he would have been shut down.
I think he's under Jerry's chair.
Really?
Get him, Amber.
Everything's good at home. Okay, onwards.
Where
Did we
the
get
heck did he
Yeah,
come
he's,
from?
he's 6 feet under.
Okay.
I don't know, you came dive bombing in.
We'll fish you for
somewhere.
that, yeah. I was like, oh. My
I
hair.
was gonna squish him right there, but I thought you were
I
trying to
was
save
gonna
him
try- I
for
was
some
gonna
reason.
try to say, why would I do that? What's wrong with
You're
you?
Well,
allergic.
Amber's kicking me
I know.
out. I want
And I'm a beekeeper, you know.
And you
Sorry.
correct me if I'm wrong. This does not.
Are we talking about the wasp?
No,
No.
I want to forget about him.
Okay.
I want to make sure that people understand that this law, when adopted, would not touch upon private solar systems. Is that correct?
And that is what we are part of our discussion tonight, along with Mr. Marks and Mr. Limbeck, because I know in reading it, maybe some of you came up with some other, like, like for me, it was the 600 kilowatt. Now, I know that is in the NYSERDA, but I'm not a physics major, I'm a biology major, so I don't know how that calculates into the batteries in your mowers or the batteries in my solar system at home that's storing things. I don't know what that number,
How large of a battery that is.
yeah.
Exactly. What kind of unit
I have
would
no
be
idea.
storing something that's,
Most of the tier 1 and tier 2 applications we get are much lower than 600 kilowatts. It's not going to do anything for your batteries and your trimmer, your blower, those types of
Not a
things.
thing.
Now, if we were to get it, I can't imagine getting a tier 1 or a tier 2 application that would be over 600 kilowatts. But
so I guess I'd still like to visually understand what something in that range might look like before we say, yeah, 600, kilowatt hours is, yeah, no problem. 600 or less, like how much does that accommodate? I know it's probably, household. I tried to work with my husband today and count and figure out what that might be, and looking at what a typical household energy usage might be, and how does that translate? So if I wanted to put in a power wall or, some, because I have solar panels. Currently, I'm not, just personally, not we're just connected to the grid and I have no backup capability right now. But it's something I'm interested in personally, and I know other people would be too. But what does that mean? What does that mean?
I was told, not an expert, and I am reliable on what I was told, that a house system for a 3,000 square foot house would be 6 to 10 large vehicle batteries. Now, if somebody knows better than that, speak up, please. But that's what I was told.
But do we know like how many kilowatt hours?
That came from a place down the street when I said I want to power my house with solar and I want to have battery backup, and that's what how big's your house? 3,000 square feet. That's what they told me.
I mean, technology is changing rapidly.
Yeah, it could be the size of a pack of cigarettes.
And honestly, let me just back up here. This battery energy storage system is not just for solar. You could have a windmill on your roof that's generating power. So it's to store any energy.
Right.
I mean, again, I have a bunch of ego equipment, lawn equipment,
Yes.
because I'm sick of gas mowers and pulling that thing and just like rip your arm out. So those are battery energy storage systems. So I don't want to get caught up in that, but you can go to Home Depot and buy this pack and stick 4 of those things in, which I have. And if the power goes out, I can plug in my refrigerator to this thing and have that run that for a while. For example, that's a battery energy storage
Yes,
system that's portable.
different application.
Yeah.
Yeah, but is it, if this
I think
law
it says
is,
I think there is a spot in there that omits them from this battery storage
Well,
law.
I
I
think,
thought
The,
Okay.
The capacity of an electric car.
well, they
I
said
mean,
portable
size-wise.
12-volt storage
Well,
units and
that
stuff
would
like
be
that, they
like
said in
6 to 10.
here, not.
I'm just looking at the six
it
hundred.
refers,
Yeah,
I
I-
think we need to update the language in this thing, and I'd like to work with an electrical engineer
What's it?
that understands these things, because it refers to a 12-volt car battery being exempt.
What if you have
Whereas,
10 of them?
well, that's the point. That's the point.
Well, it's not 600 kilowatts per hour.
But
Well,
we
that-
need, I need personally to know, well, what does that cover? What facilities in town would use that? I mean, there could be a business.
And we have never discussed this before, but I think it's important for you to bring that up. And I can't remember what my home generator is. It's one of the popular ones.
13, 18 kilowatt.
No, the make.
Right,
Generac.
Generac.
We have a Generac.
Generac, thank you.
Uh,
The Generac company also produces an alternative to a home generator that converts the,
Solar power into a battery that hangs on
Yes.
the garage wall.
yes,
Can be added to. So John Hinman from MRV Group might have access to an electrical engineer that could.
So I think that would help. I mean, this all started because we were worried about the utility scale plants in
building
town.
size battery.
And, building size batteries and everything that's associated with that and the issues with that. And that was our main purpose, I believe, in going down this road, and not to hurt the average homeowner who wants to have some energy backup for, solar panels on their roof. Okay, but when I look at what's excluded and how we define it, I don't understand what I'm reading.
And that came out of the NYSERDA
Yes.
model energy.
I know, but
carrier.
it's not clear.
No, I agree.
And when I look at, and they talking about excluding a 12-volt car battery, I'm thinking, really? When did you write this? 1975? I mean, we're so much more advanced than that in what you can buy and put in your garage wall to store energy.
and as councilperson Morelli suggesting that she take on that task of looking at this with an
I'll second
With,
that.
electrical engineer?
yes, with Amber, because she's our, but I mean,
Yeah,
it's,
that'll
it's
be good. I'll work on it
tangentially
with you.
related to our solar is, but it doesn't have to be solar.
No, because it can be this other alternative that I was talking
It can
about.
be windmills too.
Yeah.
That's
Could
exactly
be a
right.
windmill.
So, yeah, I'd like to,
Yeah,
Yeah, see if-
this isn't solar, this is battery, this
Yes,
is storage.
Right.
exactly, it's a
And
battery.
that's what we
That's
need
why
to
this
stay
was not
focused
part
on,
of our
right.
local solar law.
Thank
Right.
you.
Yeah.
F-150, the electric file, we show the power goes out, you plug it in your house to the truck.
Oh, right, right, I've seen that.
It's
Do
a
you have
good
one of
You don't
commercial.
wanna
those?
I want
exclude
that truck.
Did you buy one of those?
Before
I
we,
mean, if you
so
put it in your garage.
Jean and I'll work on that.
So we need the
Robert?
definition of, we need to figure out what exactly a 600
Right,
kilowatt.
Yeah,
that-
hour
yes.
is.
something that we can understand,
Exactly.
like what exactly.
So
does this look
everyone
like?
can understand.
Yeah,
Robert,
Okay.
on page 3, under letter C, zoning districts were allowed.
Yep.
Number 1, non-commercial, blah, blah, blah. Then it says battery energy storage system permit. I'd like to hear from John, but it says from the code enforcement officer. That should be from the building inspector, right? All permits are through. That I just caught, but.
Yep.
okay.
John, do you want to talk about
I
the,
sent that note out to
Yep.
everybody, and I feel that our current building permit application handles all of the information that NYSERDA suggested on their permit. And I'll point to the fact that we did the Werner Solar Farm with our building permit application. It all depends on what you require as supplemental information, which is what we do. And my fear is that if we add another permit, it becomes confusing for the residents. And it sets a precedent to, bring in additional permits for special features.
So what can we do to upgrade the existing permit?
I don't think we need to.
You don't think we need to?
No, as I said, for any particular application, regardless of what it is, we require what we need, whether it's manufacturer's recommendations, whether it's, another engineering report, whatever that is. We do that using our permit.
So what do you need a permit for if it's, again, in my example, you go to Home Depot and buy a portable battery storage system and carry it and stick
portable
it,
generator?
like a generator, but it's not a generator. It's a battery storage system.
It'd be like for your appliances.
Yeah, yeah,
That's something that plugs into the wall. We don't
Yeah.
issue a building permit. for
I
that.
didn't think so,
No.
but that's not clear,
But
I
this,
think.
this thing that I was talking about is more than that.
That would be more akin to a generator or a tier 1 solar, where you've got solar panels on the wall. And instead of a direct tie into your panel box, now you're gonna have a storage system in your garage. We would handle that with a building permit as part of the tier 1 solar.
Okay,
Okay, but for something that you plug into the wall to charge your blower or whatnot, that's not.
and a
something-
secondary system, if you have an existing solar panels on your roof, I'm talking residential right now. And because these things are becoming more available,
Right,
that would require a building permit or just a,
tier 1 solar where you're putting panels on the roof, or tier 2 solar where you're putting them in the yard. And they're tying into the house. We would use our building permit application and depending.
but you
on-
already have the solar panels there and you want to add a Tesla Powerwall, for
Then we
example.
would, if the people came to us, which a lot of them don't, we would require them to get another, an electrical upgrade is one of our categories on the building permits. So we would have them fill out an application for an electrical upgrade, get what we needed. And in that case, it would be the manufacturer's installation recommendations, because that's what New York State tells us to inspect to. And then, whatever else we needed, and then they would have to get inspected by one of the approved agencies. And that's how we find out when people do things that they didn't apply for a permit for. I'll get a certificate from the electrical inspection that so-and-so did whatever work and it passed. And then we make them go and backplug through the system.
And I'm guessing that the limitation that we would also want to allow within the town, I shouldn't call it a limitation, but if an existing, say there's a, a commercial building, light in a, light industrial area has panels and they want a storage system, it would hopefully fall under that threshold of that, I don't know what if it's a 600 kilowatt, that's why, again, I don't know what that covers.
Wouldn't be.
Yes, so as I understand it, the 600 is the cutoff. So if you're above 600, this is not permitted generally. If you're below 600, what the intention of this is to focus on not portable battery storage, not batteries that are portable, but if someone is physically going to install a battery storage system, the idea is to have them go to John or go to the planning board or whomever the town board wants them to go to get a permit to do that.
So,
For
the 600
or
or
above.
For less than 600.
less than
For
600,
above 600, you can't get a
You
permit.
can't get it. Okay.
right, it's not
Site
permitted
plan,
in the
it's just
town,
not permitted.
but who came up with the 600?
Not David or I. That would be just from NYSERDA.
The NYSERDA model,
Right.
And that's
but
where I
we
think
could
you're
decide
right.
it's whatever.
You could make
If
it
you wanted
less,
to
you
make
could
it
make it more.
400, based on your research, if that's what you were comfortable
Correct.
with, you can make your local law whatever you want it to.
We just need to understand what that number.
Yeah, how
means.
much will that
Right.
handle, without it crossing over into something that really is
Residential.
more a utility level?
Right.
Okay,
But the other thing was the NYSERDA checklist.
That's us.
And I suggested that, we've just added probably 9 or 10 checklists for other features that people might want to do to their home to help them with that. I could see adapting that and adding it as a checklist on the website, to help people, here's what you need to do in the town of Rush.
John, since we're going to be talking about the fee schedule and Scott's here as well for that discussion. That's not currently on our fee schedule
What's that?
for a battery storage.
If it were to
Would it-
be,
would it-
if something were to come up, I do it under an electrical improvement. Or I
Electrical
do it
improvement,
If
okay.
it was part of a tier 1 or a tier 2, we've already got that on the
Okay.
fee schedule.
That was
Okay.
my
And
other
if they were
question.
just to upgrade their system, let's say you've got panels on your roof, and now you want to go into a Generac system in your garage, it's storage, we would do that electrical upgrade.
right, the electrical, okay.
That makes sense. I agree with you. If we've got a good system working and you are good with that, you're our expert, so
But we-
it does not make sense.
Like I
to-
say, we've done everything from, additional outlets in a house to, the Jewel Energy, with our permit. So
Okay,
it's just the supporting documentation that you get with it.
all right, so I think what I heard, if Jean will pull me in to work on this, and we'll reach out to John Hinman
Yeah,
and
And see if he
share
can
that
help us
information and,
get an understanding of what
Right.
that handles.
What that number
right,
will do.
I think that would be
We're visual
important
learners.
because
Yeah.
we don't want to get into permitting a solar panel on a roof that somebody is using to keep the battery in their boat charged. But if somebody's got batteries in the garage fed off a solar panel on the roof that will power the house
Right,
in the absence of,
yeah, you have
Grid
another
power.
ice storm,
that's a
whatever.
different situation. Good.
If somebody secretly got 100-pound battery in their garage. maybe we need to
Or
go
two of
look
them.
at it.
Go all plug into Jerry's house.
Yeah. All right.
so
Considering we got to move on. Didn't you hear what he said?
Yes, and since Scott's here and he might not want to sit through all the rest of it, he's here to help us understand the fee schedule from planning board. John's here to help us with building department. Is it okay if we jump to the fee schedule, everyone?
That's
And I did print out extra ones. Does anyone need it?
that's next
Do you
on
need
my
one?
list.
Yeah. I've got a couple. Do you need one, Dan?
Yeah, I can
I
pull it up
printed
on the
one
email.
out, so it shouldn't. Okay. It's nicer.
Pam, do you
Mine is
need one?
smaller.
You want a bigger one, Jean?
Since you have it.
Scott, you got it? Do you need it?
Printed, but you might have printed better than I did.
You printed it on one where it gave you the notes.
John, you
I
got one?
printed
Okay.
out, like I said,
Before we get started on this, John, you had a hand in this.
I just did the building.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Did you do comparison across 40-acre lots? Like Mendon?
Yeah, pretty much. So we base it on, what the inspections, what the different things are gonna be entailed. And we did it, some of them just so that they matched the categories we had in IPS, because it goofed up the clerks when they went to enter the payment, what the permit was for.
Good, thank you.
So if you go to the second page, anything in red, anything that's printed in black is what is on the current that we adopted on the organizational meeting. And then John submitted what you see in red as new. And then if you go to the fourth page, either blue or purple, depending on how the ink, that's, John, if you want to run us through on page
Sure.
2 real quick.
What we did, we were getting more and more exterior remodeling. And over 240 square feet, we get into typically more requirements for the structure itself and more inspections. So we split it up based on that. Same thing with the residential garage. I think we've done probably 5 or 6 already this year where people want to put additions on for garages, and some of them, have the potential to get fairly large. So again, we looked at that in our old fee schedule. Some of the garage were, a $50 fee. And some of these garages, you've got 7 and 8 inspections that you've got to go out and look at with plumbing and water and electric and different things. So that generated those. Residential sunrooms, we didn't have before as a category, and sunrooms are an actual IPS category. And I think since I've been here, I've done 3 or 4 of those. So we, just put it on there. And again, this is more geared so the residents can take a look at this and understand what they're looking at. Because a lot of the applications I get, they've already filled in the fee, hoping that I don't raise it. Miscellaneous commercial construction, that was new. And it just reflects some of what our neighbors do. We don't have a lot of commercial, so we don't have a lot of commercial construction, but trying to anticipate it, I put this in here as a fee, and if we get something, at least we can take a look at it and see,
Can you give us an example what that would be covered by that?
Let's say the 7-Eleven over here wanted to put a new storage facility on the side for their propane cylinders. They come in for a permit for that, and we use it like that.
Thank you.
I think the guy across the street might want to do tire storage, those types of things. And that way, it's not so much the fee as it is documenting what he did to his building. Okay. Then if you go on to page 3, the decks, we had a flat fee of $50, and that one should be decks up to 120 square feet. And then decks over 120 square feet. And again, this reflects the additional inspections that New York State's making us do, with heights for railings, railing spacing, deck framing, attachments to buildings, those types of things. So just represents a little bit more of my time. And residential greenhouses, I think we've got 3 of those. And again, that is a category within the IPS system where we can issue a permit for it. And we had been putting those into the system as like sheds. So this just gives us a better idea of what we're issuing permits for. And that's the total of the building portion of it.
On communication device installation, is that like a ham antenna?
No, this is like the things we're getting for Crown Castle, where they want to come in,
Oh,
they want
okay.
to swap out.
Got you.
Cell
Antennas.
towers.
Yes,
yeah.
yeah. That, right now, that's a flat fee of $1,000.
And that hasn't changed.
No.
Scott, you want to pull up a chair? So unless you want to yell from a distance.
I just want to let you know that someone did say in the chat that it's very hard to hear everybody. So if everyone could speak up a little bit louder, then they could hear at home.
Any help pulling anything up? All right, we're ready for you. We're on page 4, correct?
All right.
Planning board?
Yes. So I never paid attention to planning board fees before I became chairman, but this year I started looking at what the applicants were putting on their applications, generally accepted as their fees, and on surprisingly high percentage were not what I would interpret the fee schedule to be. And that's because the current fee schedule, I feel, is fairly ambiguous. It's not clear in a number of cases, and in some cases doesn't make a lot of sense. So the applicants, where there's ambiguity, of course, interpret it to their favor. So of the numerous failures that I saw, they were all in favor of the applicant to the detriment of the town. So this is an attempt to make the fee schedule clear, unambiguous, and make sense. It is not designed to change any of the fees. However, where there's ambiguity, it depends on how you interpret it as to whether there's a change from what you think it was or not. So what were all the differences that are listed? First of all, single-family dwellings, $150, or has been in the past, and it was not clear because that says for application for a site plan review. If typically in Rush, you get a single lot and a single site plan for that lot. So that would be $150. But what in the case where somebody shows up with a site plan for 10 lots or 50 lots, which can happen? Is that $150, or is it $150 for each of the 10 or each of the 50? It makes 100. My guess is in the past, it typically was a straight $150, regardless of the number of lots. Robert noticed in Mendon, they charge a fixed fee and then add an incremental amount for each lot. So in my view, it's not, you can look at a subdivision of 10 lots and it's not 10 times the work of a subdivision plan for one lot. So I think that makes a lot of sense. So we change that to something similar to what Mendon does, which is $150 plus $50 per lot. So it's no longer ambiguous as to whether it's one lot or one site plan of multiple lots. So that would be a case where it could be different depending on how you interpret it in the past. The next line is fairly simple. It's the change is 2 or more family dwellings. Previously, it said multiple family dwellings. There's a quirk in the town code where multiple family dwelling actually means 3 or more. So we didn't have a fee schedule for two family dwelling. So this corrects that and says 2 or more family dwelling, as simple as that. Special permits is fairly straightforward. Rather than have any uncertainty about whether it applied to residential or commercial and limited industrial, we just split those out. It's not a change. Telecommunication towers are unique in that the town code requires for almost any change, no matter how small change, both a site plan and a special permit. So rather than have the communications tower folks come in and say, well, I want a site plan, and here's $250. We want to make it very clear that it's $400 for both. And that's not really a change there. There's no different, except that it says it's for all of the parts of the tier 3 solar. That's not a change from the original 600. Subdivision and re-subdivision of land. That is the one that has been probably most misunderstood. Subdivisions actually are a 3-step process, or potentially a 3-step process, according to the town code. There is a sketch review, which is like an informal. There's a preliminary approval, and there's a final approval. So the previous fee schedule had a number for preliminary approval, which I believe was 150 plus application for preliminary hearing on subdivision of land into 2 parcels. It was $150 plus $20 for each additional parcel. So that was almost often misunderstood that what this really means, the current law really means each lot above 2 parcels is additional $20. And then there was a final hearing for subdivision that was $50 per parcel over 2 parcels. So it's essentially $0 for the first 2 subdivided lots and $50 for each one over. In 2022, I believe, another category was added, and that was application for re-subdivision of $175. That doesn't make a lot of sense because there is no such thing as a re-subdivision in the town code, at least not in process terms. The re-subdivision is handled exactly like a subdivision. And whether you call something a subdivision or re-subdivision is merely whatever the county likes in the title. It can be a subdivision of this certain land, or it can be a re-subdivision of a previous subdivision. But the only significance is the title, really, and what the county wants to call it. So that became an area of confusion. The way I would interpret the current code with a re-subdivision of 175, that applies to all re-subdivisions and subdivisions for an application, and then there's preliminary hearing and the final hearing. That's all very confusing and often was gotten wrong. If you figure out exactly what those mean and say that the 175 new re-subdivision fee applies to all, that all can be simplified. And believe me, mathematically, it works out this way. That's $185 plus $70 for each lot in the final subdivision. Okay, that's not a change according to interpretation that that new $175 fee applies to all subdivisions. So that would, again, that's only arguably different depending on how you interpret that. So
Scott, can I just, you said
Sure.
175, but ours says 185. I just want to,
yeah,
Plus 70.
mathematically it works out because
Okay.
that 175 for the
That's-
re-subdivision
Uh-huh.
is for every subdivision, re-subdivision in my interpretation, other people's interpretations. But then you have the $150 plus 20 for each lot over 2, plus the 50 for final on over 2 lots. If you work it out mathematically, it does come out to 185 plus $70 for each lot, because you've got the 175 application plus 150. If you work that out for 2 lots, 3 lots, any number of lots, it comes out to 185. It looks different, but it's not.
and that's not site plan. This is under the
This-
subdivision.
This is
category.
under subdivision.
Okay.
Correct.
So 185 plus 74
For
For
each
each,
lot.
for each lot in the final subdivision. So you no longer have to think, well, is this part of the first 2 or not? You just say how many lots are in the final subdivision, and it's 185 plus 70 for each final lot each lot in the final subdivision.
Are we still using re-subdivision because it's in the code as re-subdivision?
So
or is there
we've simplified that and said subdivision / re-subdivision of land. Right, so anything,
so
whether it's
there's
a
no re-subdivision of a subdivision?
it's just semantics.
Okay.
Everything since the original Gorham Phelps purchase has been a re-subdivision, right? So you shouldn't get an argument about whether something's a subdivision or a re-subdivision. The town code actually says re-subdivisions will be handled just like a subdivision. And there is no distinction in the code, okay? So you group them into one, say subdivision, re-subdivision, it's just terminology. And you can apply this one formula, only knowing the final number of lots, and it's very simple and straightforward. So that's the proposal. And then I broke out and said a simple lot line alteration is 185 because there's no smaller number, that sort of thing. The combined lot is
Scott,
185.
can I just go back to that first one, just to clear in my head on the subdivision? It's 185 once, right?
Once.
Plus the 70 for
70.
each.
70 times each final
Yes.
lot.
Got it.
The number of each final lot.
Because the 70 actually is the final. Is that correct or not?
For each lot
For
in the
each
final
subdivision.
subdivision, right? So
Right.
if you go from 1 lot to 10,
Mhm.
it's 185 plus 10 times 70.
Right.
But if it's just a 1 lot, it's 185 and 70.
If it's, well, the subdivision has to be, end up in 2 lots, right?
Okay.
Or it wouldn't be so, well,
Okay,
unless it's a combination.
Okay,
Because combinations are.
we're getting to that now.
You can combine this, you can combine 2 lots into 1, and then it's 185 plus 170.
Yeah.
But if you're going the other way, it's going
Plus
from.
7 at once.
seven.
Right, yeah, I knew,
Single 70.
Yeah, 1
When it's
times
okay.
70.
Got it.
Thank you. So the smallest normal subdivision would be going from 1 lot to 2. It would be 185 plus 2 times 7.
Yeah.
Scott, lot line alteration between 2 lots. Does distance play a role in that?
No, the town code says something like the planning board can have a simpler process for lot line alterations, I think is the term. But we make no distinction on the significance. I think a long time ago, we decided that we're not going to differentiate lot line adjustments from other subdivisions because you don't know what's on the lot line. I've seen septic systems that are on easements and other people's property, for example. You don't want to get into that kind of thing.
Thank you.
And, oh, sorry, and when, if this gets adopted as is or whatever future form, I know the town clerk and I had a conversation that we thought of like a training session or a frequently asked handout with examples that they could hand to someone as well as everyone would understand it. Did I have that right, town clerk?
I
or
wouldn't
no?
hand anything to him.
Okay,
But I wanted to know explanation wise, what's the 185? I know if we're doing a building permit, it's because he's going out doing more inspections. But what's the 185 for?
It's essentially for a sketch layout review. If they want that, it's for the preliminary hearing and the final hearing.
I know, I can read that.
Yep.
but you're saying
But
you'd
is
like
there
that in
anything
writing?
else involved in it? Is it anything administratively? Is it doing a notice? You know, like all the semantic little
Well,
administrative stuff
It's, yeah,
included in that? Did we
it includes,
calculate all that into the 185?
well, it includes all of that. It's whatever the town is providing now for what was 175 plus, or I'm sorry, 150 plus 20 for each additional person.
That's what sort of
Yeah.
what I'm asking,
Yeah,
like,
it's all back.
where'd we come up with that?
The 150, the current 150,
Yeah,
it's historical. I don't know.
that's what I mean.
I understood you needed something to explain, but we can talk about that separately and put something together
Yeah,
so that you can
there is-
explain to people.
There is no logic in my proposal here about what things actually cost. You know, how much time it typically takes of the planning board and what the planning board salaries are, how much it costs to go out with the announcements of the hearings and that sort of thing. That's not here. I'm just trying to come up with a simpler and more easy to understand representation of the current fee schedule.
All right, so I interrupted you, my apologies. Go ahead for the other
problem.
parts.
I mean, you folks are the one who set the fees, so if you don't like the 175 or 185 and rather go to 175, you know, that's up to you. I'm just trying to get as close to the current fee schedule as possible. One last thing I'll mention under other fees, and this is the all legal and engineering fees incurred by the planning board. Just says for consultation and review of a site plan, special permit or subdivision application. There's the important part, or for inspections of site conformance to an approved plan. One deficiency we now have is we don't have a mechanism to charge the applicant for follow-up on site plan requirements, like retention ponds, like culverts, like any other, you know, site environmental type things that need to be done.
Landscaping
We-
plans at the end of the job.
Right. So we write in requirements and conditions that the applicants have to meet, but there's typically no follow-up. There have been cases where and that responsibility to follow up and site inspections for site things, not buildings. John handles the buildings. That's in his job description, but site work is not in the building inspector's job description. So that work would naturally fall to the town engineer. There have been cases in the past where the town engineer has gone out and looked, but it's not common. And if they did so, theoretically, I would get charged to the town, not to the applicant, because this phrase, or for inspections of site conformance to an approved plan is not in the fee schedule. So this closes that loophole and makes it clear that the town expects site work to be done. We confirm by inspection by the town engineer, and that fee will be charged to the applicant.
Would that include drainage districts?
Typically, the drainage district typically is nothing more than an easement, from our standpoint.
Right.
And this does say that
The next
all
line
fees
down.
required when filing special districts within Monroe County, such as townwide drainage and park districts, are charged in full to the applicant. So I think that's a county charge that the applicant would have to pay. And there's another loophole there. And I think, so I'm not on the subject directly, but I think in the past applicants may have been getting away without filing drainage district easements. So we typically, the planning board will put as a condition, an easement has to be provided, approved by the town attorney and the town engineer and filed with the county. But I don't think we've been requiring proof that it's been filed with the county before the planning board chairman signs off on the drawing. So I recognize that, and I'm just starting to do that. So I don't know what that proof looks like, but I'm guessing that we've been relying on people's goodwill to actually do those, get those easement filed with the county.
We don't have a good track record of that sometimes.
We don't know. My guess is we probably don't have a good track record, but we don't have data.
Well, I think it's just what you said, that there has not been a checklist of checking the conditions that something, I know when I was on the zoning board, there was a particular variance was given, but they had to plant trees for privacy along there and they never planted the trees.
I do know, Jerry, that at least 2 occasions this year, and that may be most of the drainage district easements that we required. 2 of those didn't have evidence at the time of signing. And I asked, where is it? And 1 showed up, but 1 we're still waiting for. So I think it's not been verified in the past. But again, I don't have evidence.
Wow.
Where do they get filed in Monroe County?
Just, I mean, you can find with the Monroe County clerk, and then their
Does
records are found
does the
online.
engineer file them? Who
The
files?
applicants or the applicant's engineer could file.
So the applicant would have to sign, then I would presume the engineer would typically take them down there. So the question we have is, could we come up with a process where the clerk knows what county agency to check with and verifies that before the planning board chair or deputy gets called in to sign the plans?
But I'm also think it's acceptable to put the burden on the applicant to bring proof of the filing, bring a copy that has a
Mhm.
timestamp date or some form
So
of.
that
proof.
should come with the Mylar to be signed.
Then we have assurance
Yeah.
that it
Right.
is filed so that we have, and we're not chasing down that.
Yeah.
easement.
Because Pam may be able to look online and do it, but if the applicants
Yeah,
want
that
to
would-
condition it, why not make them show that?
Right.
So in our application packet, there is a sheet that talks about what comes after the planning board approval, the public hearing approval. And with regards to sign offs that you need and what order they're done with the planning board chairman signing the last. That sheet could state that all easements, and it's not just drainage district, it could be easements with a neighbor and a driveway or whatever else. That sheet could state that we need proof of the easement before sign offs occur. And it probably should. It doesn't mean that the applicants will do it automatically, but we can at least say, now this says you had to do it. And we notified you of that. So there's ways to close loopholes. We're finding them and trying to close them as we go.
Well, I know, I appreciate you finding that
And
loophole that needs to be closed.
I don't have any angst about the fees.
I'd like to respectfully request that the next one be kept though. It's any legal or engineering fees incurred at the discretion of myself for plan review or consultation. The note says this should be changed, result of discussion and agreement of change to engineering fees incurred for site inspections. This is intended more for zoning applications where I have to issue a denial and set up a variance. I might have to have discussions with Robert or David, or we might have to have, if we get challenged and we've got to go for a state code review, this makes sure that we've got a vehicle so that the town doesn't get charged for those situations.
So when I see other fees.
It's another fee. It's a different fee. It's not associated with the
Just
planning
planning board.
board or the zoning board. This is just a fee in case I've got to talk more so with Robert. I might have to get into something with John Hinman based on an application.
So when an applicant gets that bill, they might say, well, I didn't know you were going to have to, I'm playing devil's advocate here. I'm going to be.
When I get an application, if I know it needs a variance or with my process going forward, if I know it's going to have to go for a site plan review or a special permit, that applicant is told immediately that their application is on hold pending an application for site plan, special permit, or that they've got to go to the zoning board for a variance before I can issue the permit. But before I get to that, I may have conversations with Robert that, how do we want to do this? What's the best wording of it? That type of thing. I don't want to get a bill from Robert saying, hey, I spent 2 hours on Limbeck, and the town gets paid, it gets billed for that.
So does that belong under planning board fees though, or something
No,
else?
this was just other fees. I didn't anticipate it to be under planning board. This is under other.
Oh, okay,
So-
well, that other is a subsection of planning board.
Oh, okay.
At least that's my answer.
Well, that was my, we could put it someplace else
Yeah.
if that makes more sense. Wherever we put it, I just don't want to lose the availability.
We just put other building fees because they do. It
Yeah,
does
no,
coincide with the.
yeah, we got to definitely differentiate it between any planning board.
So what if we moved the other fees, Scott, of just planning board under, and just say planning board other fees?
Yeah.
And then make this one its own
Other building fees.
other building fees. Is everyone okay with that?
Yes.
So the one up above it, the other planning board fees.
Other, right, other.
And then you're just gonna take that one that's crossed out and move that over to the
We would-
building side of it.
We would just make another heading for it.
Other.
Okay.
Building department.
Building department fees, okay.
Anything else?
No,
Scott?
On the previous topic though, the Ford 150 Lightning, that's the
Oh.
electric pickup truck.
Uh-huh.
It claims you can buy a system that you can run your house, a typical house, for 2 to 3 days. Say 3 days, I think is what they advertise, off of that truck battery. And if you were very careful about how you use electricity, you might get up to 10 days. Now, I don't know how many kilowatt hours that is in that battery, but if you get an idea of how big the truck battery is, that's what will run a house.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, interesting.
Do you have one on order?
I know, you get one.
All right, I will make the appropriate changes and send it for your review, and then we would, at the town board meeting, schedule a public hearing. Is
Well,
it-
so
I-
I'll talk to David about this. It may just be you can do it by resolution as opposed to local law. Because I was just looking under the town code and section 36 said that it could be amended by resolution.
Okay.
3624, a fee schedule shall be established by resolution of the town board. Such fee schedule may thereafter be amended from time to time by like resolution. So It may not be a local law.
Okay.
Well, I will look into that. and let you know.
Okay,
Like we do with the organizational meeting.
well, that's,
Right,
I had
yeah.
asked the question.
Same thing.
Right.
I just,
Sounds
like, yeah.
It was advised too.
I just,
Did a resolution previous, after the.
Right, I found one where we did a resolution without a public hearing under Attorney Mancuso and, right,
Yeah.
that makes sense to me.
So
Okay,
that's my,
I'll amend that and send it to
Okay.
you three for your review.
back on the Ford,
Oh,
just saw that the big battery, that you have two batteries, the biggest one that they advertise 3 days of your house is 131 kilowatt hours.
Oh, okay, 131.
600 is roughly 4 times that.
Yeah.
So that would be running your house for 12 hours.
Yeah.
Or 12 days, actually.
It could happen, right?
yeah, after a nice storm.
That's what I mean.
Luckily, they turned down our street. All right, sir, back to you.
Can we move on?
Of course. Thank you, Scott.
Thank you.
That was very
Yes,
helpful.
thank you very much, Scott. That was interesting.
Yeah.
All right, I think we're back on number one.
I
since
think we
jumped.
can go back
God, I
to,
can't remember.
uh,
Right up here.
yep, update of the town code for farming, et cetera.
Yep,
Dan,
yep, so Dan and I met a couple weeks ago, we both had a pretty busy June. So we touched base on what we had talked about was, some of the setback stuff. Mark David had informed John, I believe you, at one point that we could set our own town setbacks on state and county roads. We were all in agreement that we would like to have a uniform setback for those. So Dan and I went through, and I don't know if, Dan, did you get that emailed out today, what I sent you? Everyone, okay, so I apologize for that, everybody. So we came up, and I can pass this around to everyone. The way that this schedule was set up before was in the R20, state or county was 110 feet. So we took that out. In the R20 here, it said all others were 100 feet. So now for the R20, it would be 100 feet. And I believe that was for all the residential districts was 110 for state and county roads. For town and all other roads was 100. So we'd make that all 100. The other one, and the only thing that we kind of got a hiccup on at the last workshop was in the commercial district. In commercial districts, the state and county is 140. But on the town roads, it's 100. So if that's what the town roads are, we couldn't see why we wouldn't make everything 100. I didn't see any problem with making it 100 across the board, whether it was a commercial district or.
Is the reason you think it was 140? I'm just thinking for commercial and industrial, like limited industrial, is because of what they would have to put in with how much state and county roads have to be able to work on the sides of the road? I don't
The
know.
state and the county don't set any requirements. They say.
No,
they're
I'm just-
strictly county.
Right, I'm just saying the amount, whatever they have to run, easements, utilities, whatever, on state and county road versus say a town, a local road. I don't know why it would have. been
Yeah, I don't know
140.
why it would have been different either. I don't. And it's,
I think the reason is to keep parking lots further back off of roads for commercial, different, things that are going on.
That's good.
so you
well, these
have
aren't for,
landscaping.
this is just for commercial districts.
That's what I'm saying. For commercial districts, you might have, like Cuba Studios, now you've got parking lot
Yeah.
between the building and the road. And how do you want to, keep that? Do you want that closer to the road than it is now?
So that's something that's up for discussion. And is Cukit, is that a commercial district over there?
Mhm.
And-
Or limited?
Yeah.
It's limited industrial.
Limited, yeah,
Limited
limited, yes,
industrial,
yes,
yeah.
yes, okay, yeah.
What would you just take a stab at how far they're off the road?
They got a variance for 60 feet.
That's what I thought.
The building 60
They're-
feet?
Yeah, the
They're,
building 60 feet.
it's-
And there's no
See it-
parking lot next to, between that and the road.
Yeah, I mean, seeing that building, if they could, well, of course, they got a variance, but it's 60. 100 would seem more than reasonable to get a parking lot in the front.
Yeah, I don't have. a
So,
problem
so
with it personally.
then we could, everything could be 100.
That's a good example of if they're that close and they don't have necessary,
Their
I mean,
new
they've got a
addition-
fair sized lot in
Their,
front of
their,
them.
their existing addition, that blue building.
Yeah.
Is 60 feet back.
Yeah.
And for the new addition, they mimicked the 60 feet.
Yeah.
So you can see what they've got there.
yeah. And then the only other one was for restricted business district was 140 feet on all roads, and I don't really know
We have
why.
that here?
I didn't,
Well, it's in the code. It's just like we,
it's,
we've
yeah, it's
got
something that's there.
our MD and RH and RR.
But we
Yeah.
don't actually have anything
I
zoned
don't think
as,
we have any.
do we?
I
currently.
didn't see anything, no, I
I don't
had
think
not.
so.
No, I
But-
don't think we do.
It's
What-
commercial limited
Is it
industrial.
restricted business, what's through the hamlet? What is,
Well, let's go
What
get our
would that
zoning
be?
map.
Well, no, it's not.
it's something different.
It's mostly all commercial community. That's
Yeah,
what
the
it's-
Yeah, but
CC.
that's the other one that,
We're still, nobody knows what that is, it's nowhere.
Right.
Yeah.
Unless, I don't know. I had a
It's all speculation.
speculation of what might have happened, but like you said, it's purely speculation. It's no,
I haven't seen any documentation that shows what that.
The houses in the business has gotta be more than, or less than 140.
Oh, these in
Yeah, but
here?
that's because the zoning went in after those were built. They're all pre-existing non-conforming.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean you then say, okay, well, let's
Right.
conform to that.
which,
Something from 200 years ago.
yeah, but I'm saying, I mean, we've
So
already got these setbacks
Here,
on other roads.
yeah.
So why not?
So the Hamlet CC and R20.
Yeah.
And MD. Yeah, there's no restricted business.
There's a definition of it, obviously. in
Yeah,
there.
no, it's in the code. It's just nothing's on there.
So I guess for all the state and county, they're at 140 for anything that's not residential, pretty much.
That's, yeah, that's where they have, yeah, that's where they have them.
But you're saying that there's no state or county restriction that the town can't change it to whatever the town wants.
Yeah.
That's,
Is that correct?
that's what we're told, yeah. The
That's
town,
what-
the
that's what
town
Mark
can
David
set
said.
their setbacks.
And in the 2 years I've been here, I've had one commercial application, actually two. One was for a sign across the street at 7-Eleven, and the other one was for Cuba Studio. Everything else is all residential.
So Scott's not here, but I don't know what typical requirements there would be for parking. We're talking commercial, which normally you would think you need to provide a number of parking spaces for commercial business.
But this is the setback for the building from the center line of the road. It's got nothing to do with parking.
I know, but you have to have space for parking
And perhaps,
somewhere.
perhaps having that building closer to the road would allow
You
parking in
force
the
them to
rear.
Put it in the rear.
That's another way to kind of look at that. If that building's up further, then the parking's in the back.
If I go through high tech.
Yeah.
It's a town road,
Yes,
so that's 100.
that's 100.
I find it hard to believe those ones off a town line road are 140. Don't you?
I'm sorry, which ones?
I can't
there
believe
can't
the,
be, I don't think there's one of them that's 140.
I guess I'm
No,
not familiar
no.
where that is.
on Town Line Road, the high-tech development, Cuca Studios and those.
IPS.
Gilbert,
Oh,
Gilbert
yeah,
Place.
yes.
Used to be Lowell's.
I can't, I
Yeah.
find it hard to believe they're 140 bar, right?
I don't
No,
think
there's,
they are. It might be.
So,
I haven't measured.
well, I guess my question is, is there more besides just this that we still have to work on? Is
As
it
far as,
with the farming stuff?
there's a couple things,
Because this really isn't farming.
no, it's not, and but this, I mean, we're kind of, we're
But
getting
we
to the
were
point
there.
where we're getting, but, and this was one of the things at the last workshop that
Right.
Dan and I said.
We started to, yeah.
We'll work
It'd
on
be
this.
nice to be able to put everything together into a public hearing versus, you know, this
Yeah.
for just that and this for just
Yeah.
that.
So the only other thing that we had, and we had discussed it, and John,
Can we,
This-
just before we move on?
Oh, I
Oh,
didn't
yeah.
mean, I
Oh,
didn't
yeah,
mean,
yeah,
to-
yeah. I'm sorry.
I put, didn't mean to.
I don't know how you feel about, I mean, I'm still a little, you know, is 100 feet enough for a commercial building
well, it's not a commercial building. You can have a commercial building on a town road and have
in
it
a
100
commercial
feet.
zone?
You can, but you can have
It's
a,
100 now, you're saying.
if I put a commercial building
Yeah,
in a residential district,
Well, you can't.
right.
It's
No, but if you
residential.
put a
It's
commercial building on a town road, like High Tech Drive, it's only gonna be 100 feet.
yes,
That's what it
yes,
says
no,
down
yep, yep, John's 100%.
All other
Okay,
roads for
all right.
commercial and
So if it
limited
was on a
industrial is
county or a
100.
state- No, if you put,
Right,
if
right,
you
right.
put a new one
Okay.
on Rush Henry at a town line.
I get
road,
it.
That's county, then it's 100.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I get it.
you would have thought it would have been 140 all
Yeah,
for all of them.
but I guess I'm okay then because it's already
It's already there.
doing that on town roads.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Other than making that more restrictive, that would be the only other way to go is to increase
Right.
them all to
And that,
something.
I don't think I don't think that's the way you want to go from there.
So
Because,
let
I
let
mean,
me,
why?
let me
I
ask a
mean,
question.
why?
So is the parking lot not considered? If the building is 100
That
foot from the
becomes
center line?
a function of the planning board. When they get their site plan, they're gonna look at it and see how it's laid out, and they can make that requirement whatever they want. All
For a
we're
parking
saying
lot?
is that the building, when they come in, they better figure out a minimum of this minimum.
Right.
Now, again, the planning board can take a look at it and say, we want this building here, and we want the parking lot here, and we want this over here, and make that a condition.
So 120-18 is talking about in order to ensure that structures shall be adequately set back from the highway. It's not talking about parking lots or.
Right.
Or drainage swales or anything else, or easy.
I'm just thinking visually, aesthetically, for a commercial zone, whatever road it's on, just aesthetically, the look of it in the town, and I'm wondering,
I would, I guess, go back to what, you know, Dan and Amber were talking about. Then if you go to High Tech Drive, I mean, those are, a lot of those are fairly close to the road. I think that those are,
Yeah,
They're all right.
with our limited commercial, I don't think you're gonna find one that's 140 foot back on any road.
yeah,
We used to have an architectural review board in part who would weigh in on stuff like that, but they were,
Disbanded?
Yeah. I think informally, the planning board was asked to look at stuff like that.
yeah, I think they were.
Okay, I guess I'm, you know, not 100% sold on reducing everything to 100 as opposed to increasing it to something more than 100 for everything. I like the uniformity part of different things, but I'm just thinking aesthetics for commercial building and, you know, something off the road so that you could put some landscaping to make it look nice.
Looks better
So-
further back.
It looks better aesthetics, town
Mhm.
aesthetics. You know, if you're gonna require grass up front, I think, you know, you talked about some things like, you know, some landscaping, so it's not just all, you know, there's the road and there's the parking lot and nothing nice
the
in
other,
between that and the building.
and the other problem maybe with that, you might have, I guess, depending on how long of a lot it is, or if it's not a very deep lot, but a long lot, you could start to impact the size of what building you could have.
Would
By
would
the
a good
setback.
compromise be to do the residential, standardize that at 100 feet, and then the commercial, leave it the way it is for right now? Because we're not getting that much commercial development where people are screaming that, you know, 145 is too much.
And that won't happen in the near future.
No, but this way you've got your residential consolidated at 100 feet
I don't have any angst over 100.
No, on what?
for residential.
Residential. But what about commercial and limited industrial?
I think we go 100 all the way, and
I
then the
agree.
planning board do what they wanna do.
That's
There-
how I
There could
feel.
be individual circumstances depending on the application where the planning board says, no, we want this to be 110.
Can a site plan requirement trump the code for that setback?
If it is permitted by the zoning code, it is presumptively valid. So could a planning board say, because of environmental concerns or XYZ, say we want it to be farther? Yes, but presumptive, if it was ever challenged or something like that, presumptively it is, if it's permitted by the zoning code, then presumptively you're allowed to do it. But if you can make them, but a planning board could make them have a higher restriction based on some other factor. But I would be advising them, it better be a darn good reason.
You'd take the case though, wouldn't you?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
And then the reverse side is, if they don't agree with a decision, they can apply for a variance. But again, that's not what we're trying to do, is send them here, there, and everywhere. We're
No,
trying
I don't want to
have-
make everything so restrictive that you
Right.
always have to go for a variance. It seems silly, but I am just thinking about the aesthetics of commercial and trying to
So
kind of force something nice to be along the roadside.
if you were to think of a property on West Henrietta Road that did not have the proper 110-foot setback, that small house, right? Now, put that commercial or limited industrial that close. That's kind of my visual
Mhm.
of 100 feet close. There is no parking. There's no place to put a parking lot at 100-foot setback.
But in commercial, it'd be 145.
No, if they,
Yeah,
would-
yeah,
if we went
if we
100
change it.
across, so I guess, as I've said earlier tonight, I'm a visual learner. Thinking of that property, if it were zoned commercial or limited industrial, and you had a 10,000 square foot building there, that close to the road,
Yep,
I don't know, that's kind of close,
Think of the former barn.
or the former barn, yeah.
Well, that was 50.
yeah, well, we want to go that way.
But I
Um,
think the house was what, 100 and
110.
so just visually think, because that's a state road, big shoulders. There's not a lot of room at that 110-foot setback that it is now, so
Right.
I'm kind of swaying myself back. I was open,
In an application like that, the parking lot be on the side. It would have to
Had to be.
It would
not,
be
be,
in the front.
not unless it was a long, narrow, otherwise they couldn't, they would be able to put their parking lot in the front.
But again, to allow for some visual break, to make it aesthetically more pleasing
Mhm.
for the town as you drive through the town, so it doesn't, so that it looks nicer. To build that in and allow for it, so you know, come off the road into a paved parking lot, and there it is, and it's all ugly. Sorry, I just keep looking at the transition from the road into a commercial property, and my vision has something there.
Do you think Georgetown is ugly?
Outside of Washington DC,
Yeah.
but not my recollection is that it was not ugly. I don't know. It's been years, Jerry, since I've been to Georgetown.
I guess
So,
my state and county roads, I think I'm still like the 140. I understand like high tech being a town road, because that's a meandering road that you go through with being closer. But these big highways, when I think of that house being a commercial or limited industrial, that close, just,
Well, how about the car dealership of 251 and 15? That's not the 140 back. Well,
the building
might be.
is,
well,
I don't know, because of the 2 lane,
You mean tough trucks?
yeah.
there's 4 lane right there, right? From center
Oh, yeah,
line.
good point. Center.
But to edge of, I mean, from an edge of asphalt, it's probably not, but from center line,
From state, you measure from the center line.
I used to know that. I can't remember.
I'd say it definitely is.
but
Well, I
I
shouldn't
mean,
say
I
definitely.
mean, that was the code when that was put up.
yeah, but what I'm to Dan's point is, if you're thinking to the edge of the road, like that's what you're thinking, coming off the asphalt and going, you might not be from the line
You're right,
to there.
to the center of the road.
Well, not the center of the road, but from the edge of that, between the two lanes, from there to the building, say that's your center line because of where the asphalt ends. You might not be 140 and they still are able to put some cars on that east side of that lot. And they have a grass strip around there too.
Right, because it's 140. Take 20 feet off of that.
No, but
Yeah,
what I'm
right.
saying is it 140, maybe from the center line, but is it 140 from,
Aesthetically.
say that was a 2-lane road. So you measured from on the southbound lane,
No,
if you measured from that white
I
line.
understand what you're saying,
So would that, is it 140 from that line to the building?
from the center of the road.
From the
line.
center,
Center line.
Yeah.
And sometimes the center line isn't the center of the road. They paint it and it's not quite the center.
yeah.
Ask Lee Hetrick, he will tell you that.
I
That's a
think-
quote from him.
I think you're turning into an engineer.
The variation in that case is
It's minimal.
Okay,
inches.
so in that case, I'm even more for keeping it at the 140. If you're going from the center line, like, you look at that example, we've been working the tough trucks. That would be even closer to the road.
Well, no, that's what I'm saying. I don't know that it would be. I guess if you went to the center line, then yeah.
Yes,
it
if
would
I'm
probably
looking,
be- it would bring it
I'm
closer.
just trying to apply that, and I'm trying to push things back a little further for aesthetic reasons. I'm not comfortable with cutting 40 feet off the setback. Personally, I mean, I'm one of 5 here, but that's my opinion, and I just, because the aesthetics of it, I just
Mhm.
like a nicer
Think
transition.
of tough trucks 100 foot from that center line of a 4-lane road.
So tough trucks is 168.44 feet from Rush Scotts, from the yellow line for Rush Scottsville Road to the
Up about
north.
15.
From 15,
Is it 4-lane now? 251?
Mhm.
Right there. Yes.
Going all the way past the express.
give or take, it is
That's a good question.
135.30. Google Maps is pretty amazing. To this yellow line of 15,
To where on tough trucks though?
the
The
upper
building.
right corner of that building,
The closest corner?
the closest corner. If I went from the other corner, it probably would be 140.
So the
Okay.
previous building inspector, whoever did that.
Well, maybe they got a variance for 5 feet on that
No.
corner, I don't know.
They got a
But,
variant.
It also, I don't know, this is probably pretty darn accurate, but.
Well,
it's not an
again,
exact
go,
science.
again,
It's not 100.
100 would be super close. You cut 35 feet off. You're in their parking lot where the road is. So that's what I've talked myself into. I like the 100 for residential,
Yeah, me too.
and I would, my next week, if this comes up, obviously whenever, would be to keep the commercial and industrial, limited industrial as is. But again, that's just,
That's why we have 5 members. We get a diversity of thought. Any other good discussion?
I
So
mean, you feel strongly
I
about it.
sent a local law for this. You guys
Mhm.
got that, right?
Yep.
So I'm gonna leave it as without having changed the 140 to 100 unless told otherwise
for commercial and limited
for
industrial.
commercial. Yeah.
You know, it's interesting.
On state and county. or-
State and
But
county.
not,
Just state and county, not town.
Yeah.
road.
The residential will be changed as well.
But
But
the-
for
Industrial.
For commercial, the state and
um,
county will remain 140 and all others will remain 100. If you tell me otherwise, I will change it. I can also make 2 versions.
What's interesting is the personal experience I had where the former district director was very, very rigid. And if you told him you wanted to make a setback on a state highway to 100 feet, absolutely not. He'd threaten you with coming out and raising Cain with you. When Mark made the announcement at the meeting, oh, we could get down to 100 feet. State roads doesn't make any difference. And it was shortly after that, we had the generous offer for daffodils to be planted on the
Mhm.
expressway. And I called the new guy up. And his attitude was, that'd be beautiful. Daffodils, you mean real yellow daffodils? Yeah, oh, that'd be beautiful. He said, let me check with the Bureau of Real Estate to check out and check with the law department and see what they say. His
Well-
attitude was 180.
And I think, when this code was written, that was their recommendation. We're looking at changing things and it will be what this board decides to change. Or the planning board at the time, whatever they decide to do.
So I think right now we've got it to sleep on.
Mhm.
Yeah, I personally, I don't see an issue with 100, but that's where I stand. That's,
Yeah.
Again, I'm
I,
trying to.
and I get your guys' points, but.
Yes, I mean, we're
Why
a
we're here to
rural
learn.
agricultural and I want it not to look like an inner city.
I doubt that there's very much commercial. It's.
But there could be, there could be. We're going through a comprehensive
Run
plan.
through all the locations.
Yeah, but things could change once that comprehensive plan comes out. We may have other things, other areas to consider to zone
That could
differently.
happen.
That's true.
All right.
To be continued.
Yeah,
So
thank
the
you.
next thing we had was, the definition of an ag building, John. I think that's what we had discussed doing. But I don't know if we can put that in our code in where all our other definitions are. Here, if you want to pass that around. We were gonna email it out today and
Okay.
it just got too late by the time.
Ag buildings up here.
Yep, so I put that right in where it has, where all the definitions are in our code. I forget.
You added this or this was?
I added that.
Oh, okay. I'll pass it over.
In, if my ink had color, that would be green, or my printer had.
Then there,
Oh, it
then
is
there.
here, okay.
So that basically is coming right out of the tech bulletin that defined an ag building, John. That we've looked at. And so my question is, do we need to have that in there? Or John, when you're looking at that, would it be easier to have that right in the code, the definition that if it was in that tech bulletin
Yeah,
from?
what is it? I'd like to see.
Yep,
what it
that's,
says.
once
Yeah.
Jerry's done with it, yep,
Is it one of these or a different
Um,
one?
yes.
Yeah, I just read it.
What's the
Yeah.
definition of human habitation?
Well, here we go.
Human habitation is like actual living quarters,
So this
kitchen,
is new then.
Here it
sleeping.
is. Ag
Because
buildings, that's what
I'd
you're
like
talking
to
about,
see
right?
somebody
Can you read it
Have-
out loud? so
have
we
one
all
of
know
those
what you're
operations.
talking about?
Sure.
We don't have it in front of us yet.
Here. Oh, this,
So-
I'm seeing if I
That
have that.
is the definition that was in that tech bulletin. And that's the exact definition that I used.
Compare them, see if that's one and the same.
Yep.
It was in the
Yeah, it was in-
guidelines that Dan
It
and
was
Dan.
a tech bulletin, I think you had sent out at one point also, and then one that we had looked over.
Yeah,
But-
that's the definition that was in there.
Yep, exactly. So I thought that, I mean, do we need to have it in the code? Would it be easier if you had it there, or can you just refer to that? What the uniform code says,
If you're gonna enforce something, I think you should have it in the code.
the definition in the
So that
code.
people can look at it and see what it says.
Absolutely.
And that's fine, but I wanted to.
Yeah, no.
So the definition of an agricultural building, a structure designed and constructed to house farm equipment, farm machinery, poultry, livestock, hay, grain, or other horticultural products. This structure shall not be a place of human habitation or a place of employment where agricultural products are processed, treated, or packaged, nor shall it be a place used by the public. That's an ag building. The only thing that
Farm market, it could be dicey.
it's, well, a farm market, we already discussed that as being a place used by public.
Right, but it would still be an ag building, right? It was
And I didn't think that we did that. So I think if you built a barn or a greenhouse,
stand.
a farm
A
stand,
farm stand, a big farm stand, yours, Werner's.
anything like
some of
that
these bigger
open
ones,
by, then that is no longer an ag building.
It becomes a.
Then it's a
Place
regular,
of assembly.
Yes.
Okay, all right, I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
That works.
yeah, and that's exactly how it's
Yeah.
written right in uniform code.
Okay,
So you're okay, John,
yeah.
in terms
and-
from a safety and et cetera
Yeah, and I'm
standpoint?
just wondering if we should then have a definition for a farm stand, just so we close the loop on it, you know, that a farm stand
I
is
thought we had a definition for a farm
Do we?
stand in 120-20.
Yeah.
The one
Give
we
me a
did.
number and I'll see if I find it.
120-24 definitions. Oh, this is under signs. This is under the sign code.
Yeah,
Farm stand, a facility from which agriculture or nursery products produced on the premises where the facility is located are offered for retail sale.
and that's in the sign code.
It's in the sign code.
So we should just move that over to the buildings. with the
Absolutely.
Same thing here. So we.
well, let's make sure that that's the actual definition for, that might be,
Did we add it?
That's a good definition. Farm stand.
I thought we did add on to it in the new code. I thought that there was some modifications made to that back in the first round of stuff.
So we have farm stands, farm markets.
The farm stand, farm market, same thing. The
Same
only
thing.
thing we have is a temporary and permanent, are
Right.
the two variations
Temporary
between
and
that.
Got it, okay.
Yeah, I just think if we have the ag building, we have the farm stand, boom, done,
Okay.
covered.
Yeah, I mean, it says right in there, basically, place used by public.
Yeah, no,
That pretty
like I
much-
said, That's great.
The great,
Yeah.
but if we can put that in there too.
Yeah, I think it works good.
I'll look that back up again, what Dan and I worked on back in January, February, and see if I come up with a definition on that.
Yeah, no,
I just didn't bring that folder. I thought I had it.
I have, it's all on the computer app.
Okay,
I think it does.
that probably is.
In the
It'll take
office.
me too long to find
Right,
it.
yeah, I'll take a
No,
look
that's good, I
tomorrow.
like it.
Are we ready to move on?
Yep, and Dan and I were only able to really work on one other thing. And John, this is another thing I need to refer to you on.
Uh-oh.
We had discussed what are the accessory buildings, how they cannot be built in certain districts where there is not a
Residential zone
residence.
Where you don't have a primary structure. or
Yeah, primary-
residence.
right.
first.
I couldn't find that anywhere in the code. Could you tell me just where it is? Because we had talked about it and I don't know. In my opinion, I thought that if you are a commercial farm operation and wanted to put out a commercial farm, like a hay storage or equipment.
I'll look it up in my code book and I'll send it.
Okay, I'd
By
appreciate that.
definition, if you don't have a residence, then it wouldn't be an accessory building. Because you don't, it's not an accessory to anything because you don't have
That's what
another building
Robert said last workshop, right?
That's a good point.
by definition.
Yeah. So then that should, so my question, yeah, what do you do? How do you-
Yeah.
That's what I believe Robert brought up to us last meeting
Right,
about that.
but I looked through the code and I couldn't find any,
Yeah, I think that's probably
It's-
why, but
It's not an
There
easy
should
spot
be-
to find.
is it, I typed in accessory building, accessory structure, you know,
I'm sorry, Dan.
I hate to tell you for how many years I looked for that. and
Yeah,
never
I-
found it.
But it's
I'll
there.
look for it tomorrow.
okay, yeah, that would be great, that'd be great.
So that's what we want to clarify, that's why we're doing this, right?
Well, yeah, so, yeah, that's something we need to figure out.
You can't enforce what isn't in print.
Well, exactly, we don't want to make it
I used
ambiguous.
it when we shut that guy down. on
Rob-
East River Road. so I'll look
Robert's
up the
gonna
note.
have it in a second, right, Robert? You got it already there in front of you.
No, this is a John quiz. I'm leaving this one to John. I do think that there is a definitional issue because if there's no principal structure, then there's no accessory structure.
Right.
To be had, but if John finds something different, then
I'll pull up what I've
Yeah.
got. and we'll go from there.
Okay. So that was the only, that's as far as Dan and I have gotten on that. Because I wanted to look at that before, because I didn't know where to put it.
Yeah,
So I
know.
wanted to find that to know kind of where to
Yep.
put it.
Yeah, I'd like to find a place for that.
I'll send it to the whole board.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, John.
I'd like to see it.
What, we do it or find it?
No, I'd like to see it in print. All
So,
right, can we move on?
yes, we can.
We can move on to the Heat Smart program. You recall we had Matt Corona.
Yep.
Come in and explain that program to us. And the question now is, do we want to go forward with that program?
I personally didn't see any issue with it. I thought for us as a town, it seemed pretty painless for us.
It's informative. It could potentially help some of our residents who need information and aren't quite sure where to go.
That, the grant potential is,
And
was
the
it a
grant.
$5,000 grant?
Something,
Three
Yes.
people in town put in.
I thought it was pretty neat because it was
Geothermal,
focused on the
something.
individual who really wanted to upgrade their domicile.
Mhm.
Yeah, it could push them over and it helped the town.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I'd be interested to hear a little more about it myself.
I agree with you.
So I recall, Matt, if you all heard what I heard, is that at a town board meeting, we would pass a resolution to adopt or move forward or support it, or isn't that? what
Yeah, I
you
think it was
said
just
something
to
about?
support, just so that then they can start setting up their workshops or.
Right, they need some,
Yeah.
like, something official. I
Yeah.
guess.
Yes, yep, and then they can start, I don't know if they call them workshops, but where they
Yeah.
give presentations and.
Community outreach.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll put that on the agenda.
So we're moving forward.
Yeah,
Yep.
With the Heat Smart.
Yep.
program.
Yeah.
Now, go ahead.
I was gonna say that last thing is just for our
Just
future.
for proposed
Yeah.
future discussions.
Plus, remember,
Yes, sir.
I asked for some time perhaps for that note I sent out today. about-
And-
We certainly
And
have that
I
time.
think, did you, Jean had one
One
thing she ran
one
by
other
me
thing
and I
kind of
couldn't
related
answer
to the
her.
Heat Smart, and it had to do with the community choice
Mhm.
program. Because I thought I read something, and maybe it's RG&E that is pulling out of programs like that.
You did
Does it-
read that.
Does that affect
It
what?
was one specific supplier that had a problem with RG&E.
Wasn't there a billing problem or
Yes.
something like that?
I talked to Shannon at Rectricity, and that specific supplier had a problem.
Okay,
We haven't chosen a supplier yet. We're still in process. So, and I think it's more of a learning opportunity for them to watch as you're buying your electricity,
okay.
what to watch for. It just no effect on us. And end result, you just go back to the supplier that NICEX or Niagara Mohawk's picked out for you to start with. So, I mean, your bill's not gonna rise dramatically. It just won't
Okay.
fall.
Okay,
I mean, that's the gist of it.
so we're still on.
Yeah, we're still on
movers,
track.
okay.
and
I read that and I
everything's-
thought, oh, is this
everything's
dead in the
online.
water over this? You know,
Not
wasn't
yet.
sure.
No.
Okay,
It was a glitch with one supplier.
okay, great.
And I think I saw Dan there's a community at the pavilion on Thursday. There's a
It's on the website.
presentation. It's on the town website, but
I-
if it,
Could be.
I believe
lose
that's true.
track of dates.
but it
It's
said.
on the
You
town
could
calendar.
attend, yeah, by Zoom or whatever, and so if people show up, I don't know if,
They said that they would set all that stuff up, right, Dan?
Yes,
okay,
Oh,
We don't have any,
right, that's what I was gonna say, I,
so if somebody looks on our website, they don't know how to do that, zoom in.
I'll contact Shannon. and see.
yeah, my thought was from what they said is they were gonna send it out to the community and make
Yeah, that's what it's
that
supposed
it
to
would
be.
be something that they would announce and provide, so we had no issue, we had no plan.
Right, this was their presentation.
I remember.
It's just, it's on the town website.
So you'll find
but-
out if they're
yeah.
doing it or not.
All right,
Yep.
thanks.
No, it
Okay.
says, right, well, it's on the town website, you're right,
Yeah.
the 7th at 7 PM,
Yeah.
in-person session.
But it also talks about something at the board meeting.
Mhm.
That was previous.
We already had that, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, June, sorry.
So,
Mhm.
all right, thanks, Dan.
Thanks.
All right,
All right, back to Mr. Lindberg.
back to Mr.
Sorry.
Ringbeck.
Thank you for letting me interrupt you.
Several months ago, we identified an issue with Robert Graves down here at 6075 East Henrietta Road. He's got the old Rush Trading Post. He had two
Okay.
apartments up on the second floor. He wanted to remodel those. He wanted to put an apartment on the first floor and then have an office on the first floor. Town code shows that as being commercial. He's not allowed to have residential occupancy. He had two apartments upstairs and he was gonna refurbish those and he stopped. I told him that I couldn't issue him a building permit for an apartment on the first floor because residential wasn't allowed. So we kicked it back and forth. What do we want to do? We've got a whole bunch of buildings down there that are in a commercial zone, have residential. None of those, I know David House said, well, we should go survey and find out when an apartment was created in each one of them, and there's real no feasible way to do that. So I spoke with Jerry. We've got a couple of different options. He could apply for a use variance to put an apartment on the first floor, but in all likelihood, that's not going to get approved by the zoning board.
The zoning board did approve it on the corner.
Right, but again, if we can't guarantee that they
No.
would do that. And if we denied it, then he's got a very good potential to sue the town because we're denying him what all his neighbors have. So based on advice from David, I can make a determination of what exists on the second floor. So I went down there today. He gave me access to the building. There's evidence up on the second floor. It was framed for two apartments. There's plumbing, there's electrical, there's HVAC up there. I can make a determination that that's a pre-existing non-conforming use, accept his building application to, finish the refurb up there, let him do that. Also telling him that if he wants to rent the office on the first floor, he can do that, but he cannot make an apartment on the first floor pending the results of the comprehensive plan coming forth. Jerry verified that the comprehensive plan committee is looking at the hamlet and what they're going to do with that type of situation. I want to be able to tell Mr. Graves tomorrow with the town board understanding what I'm going to do, that as a pre-existing non-conditioning situation, he can complete the apartments upstairs. He can't create an apartment on the first floor, but he can rent the office space if he'd like to do that. That's basically what my note to you folks is, and it was late this afternoon, I apologize, but, he's been waiting for 3 months now, and I want to be able to tell him, this is the conditions that you can go forward with on this.
That sounds reasonable.
And again, once I don't think the town is going to rezone the hamlet. I don't know if they're going to go with a mixed use type situation. If they go with an overlay.
Something
district.
really needs to be done because the
Right.
classification down through the
And
hamlet
that's
is,
also-
Won't work.
Right.
it's,
It's a headache for everybody.
Don't know how
Yeah,
that got
it's-
that way.
It's hard on John, because you gotta deal with these people saying, well, he's doing it there, this is doing it there.
And again, the other thing was, we do have a CEO now, but Barry and I talked with Doug because it's a building thing. I'm taking care of it. But again, I wanted you folks to understand what I'm doing and make sure you didn't have any questions.
Did you say he could apply for a variance through zoning?
But if he wants to, he can.
Yeah,
But I think he'll be happy enough that he can finish the apartments upstairs and get those rented out.
I've got one more for the group.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you, John. The Fall Festival is being resurrected this year after being victimized by COVID. And Pat came to me probably 2 months ago said, what should we do to draw people and attract attention? And she said, oh, I wish I knew some of those balloon operators in Dansville. And I said, well, you got one who lives right up the street here. And save you a long story, Pat went and got in touch with him and cooked a deal with him where he will provide a balloon with a tether, you know, one goes up, comes down, goes up, comes down. And it'll be a $3,000 fee. And she's pretty much decided on a $20 ride fee for somebody who wants to go for a ride. So one of our deputy assistant lawyers complained and said, absolutely not. You can't use that $3,000 out of the reserve fund. Every house that gets built in this town has a $300 reserve fund that gets put into an account. And Pat was thinking, oh my God, I got $35,000 in that account. Why can't I just take 3,000 out and pay for this balloon ride? And oh my gosh, the protests were loud. So I told her that I would bring it up with this board. David's looking at the paperwork that covers the reserve fund to see if it can be used without a legal problem. If it can't be used, does this team want me to look into where we could get $3,000 from, or should we call it a dead issue?
I think it's a great idea.
I thought it was,
It's too,
Yeah, I think it's a
well,
great
that
idea.
was Saturday morning.
Oh, wasn't it
Oh, you're,
beautiful?
but not
I only
tethered,
saw it on,
right? You're going on the one.
I
Nice.
saw it on, you're going on it? Oh, it was all over social media. It looked
be
beautiful.
What a
careful.
fun thing. Beautiful.
I went on one.
You're still here.
Landed on North Avon Road. The wind blew the balloon and the bucket tipped over and dragged us through fresh dew on a bean field. And we came out looking like we were just out of the river. Did they give you your money back? No, it was part of the fun.
Sorry, that's better than hitting the falls at Letchworth, the dam.
All right, so I can tell
I'm in
Pat,
favor
don't
of it.
cancel the balloon.
I know, I went in a tethered one at Genesee Country Village. It was beautiful. It was a lot of
That's
fun.
what this will be, a tethered one.
Yeah, and you really could see so much.
Oh, yeah. It was fun until that happened.
No,
Night.
I think it's a wonderful
I
idea.
froze on the way home that day.
And just so you know, we've raised the recreation fee to $400. This year we did that.
Yeah.
So,
So I will tell Pat, don't cancel with Tightsworth yet. And we'll look to see where we can get $3,000. And I'll make sure that either David or Robert is involved so we don't spend money we shouldn't.
Sounds good.
Mhm.
All right. So having no further business to conduct, I declare this workshop meeting
Did John Petco
closed.
book?
Yeah.
And I was gonna say.
All in favor?
This was
All in
I
favor?
earlier today.
Aye.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, that's what, and, you know, down
Mhm,
there.
yeah.
I
Have a
always
great
shut
day.
off before you want me to.
Yeah, don't do that.
good meeting.
After recording.
Getting good.
Can I stop YouTube? It gives me the option. Would you like me to? I stopped recording already of Zoom.